So as some of you may or may not have seen, a YouTuber named SK made a video trying to call Spider-Man PS4 story bad, and in this video, it was filled with a bunch of brainless nitpicks, mind-numbingly stupid arguments, and him thinking fiction is supposed to be like reality. So that's what I'm doing today, because this video genuinely made me mad and made me waste 2 hours watching it. I don't know why I spent 2 hours watching this. But anyone with any sense of critical thinking or knowledge of this game and its story, or someone who knows that fiction isn't supposed to be like reality, would be able to make the same video that I'm making now. And since his video is mostly filled with a bunch of stupidity that just makes his video way longer than it should be, I'm gonna try and only focus on the major things about the story that he mentions and some of the nitpicks. And trust me, this man, I promise you, in the 2 hours of this video, it's filled with 90% nitpicks, and most of them are just really fucking stupid, or stuff that shows that he just didn't pay attention to stuff that happens in the story. And also, SK, if you're watching this, since you said in your video if you want to criticize one thing and not criticize another thing for doing something, I genuinely hope that you do not like a single piece of fiction, because a lot of stuff he says in this video can be applied to literally any fictional story, any movie, TV show, video, like, you know what I'm talking about. And I also just want to make it very clear that I do not think Spider-Man PS4 is a perfect game. No game is perfect. But if we're gonna criticize Spider-Man PS4 for some of the stuff that he brings up in this video, then we might as well do that for everything else as well. And another thing that makes me bad about these types of videos is that when people who are actively hating on the game watch these types of videos, they don't use any sense of critical thinking because they just want to hear what they want to hear. They don't use any sense of critical thinking to actually think of a refute to his point. So people that hate on something that watch videos like this are just gonna listen to these points and they're not even gonna use any sense of critical thinking at all. I watched this video because I wanted to hear all his points. I wanted to see if he actually made a good argument, and spoiler alert, he didn't. This video is the subject of him overthinking shit way too much, creating problems in his head that just don't exist, and throughout this 2 hour and 20-minute long video, he probably made 10 actual good points. The rest were just factually fucking wrong, so nitpicky that they weren't even worth mentioning, but he does it anyway, or stuff that shows that he legitimately just did not pay attention to the story. And I also want to say, do not go to his channel, do not go to his video and start talking shit in his comments. Don't do anything like that. If you have something to say about his video, say it in my comments. Do not go to his channel, do not harass him, don't do anything like that. My video solely exists to just pick apart his stupid arguments. So yeah, do not go to his video at all. I won't even leave his video in the description. You saw it on the screen. If you want to go watch it for yourself and hear out his points that I don't mention in this video, you can feel free to do so, but do not go harass him. Don't do any bullshit like that. So let me just get into it.
MJ is held at gunpoint by somebody, which Spider-Man has absolutely no context for. This is because MJ decided to sneak into a heavily armed Sable base without even telling Peter beforehand.
I may have a lead on that. Charles Standish is being held at Sable's Central Park compound. If anyone knows Michael's location, it'll be Oscorp's CFO. I'm trying to reach him now.
Reach him? That place is crawling with guards. How are you trying to reach him?
Very, very quietly. Gotta go, partner.
Just because she wants to do the saving too.
I'm sorry I screwed things up. It's just hard being the one who always gets saved, you know? Sometimes I want to do the saving.
That is the motivation she outlines to us to explain why she's so insistent on taking needless risks that wouldn't be present if Spider-Man handled those situations himself. But we are also given a motivation for why MJ was willing to destroy her relationship with Peter. When Spider-Man sees MJ being held at gunpoint and immediately jumps in to save her, then swings her away when the Sable agents are alerted, MJ is left quite unhappy. Not only does MJ berate him for this and state that behaviors like this are why she decided to break up with him, but this game treats Peter as if he was in the wrong for what he did. Here's the problem. With the information Peter had, he made the best, most morally righteous decision he could have made, and if actions like this are why MJ broke up with Peter, then MJ is just being an asshole to Peter for no reason, just because Peter tries to save her in situations where, as far as he knows, she would die. Would you have preferred if Peter sat and did nothing while seeing a gun aimed at you? Or would you have complained about Peter doing nothing about it when, as far as he knows, you're being held at gunpoint, just to find something else to whine over? Regardless, MJ is insipidly out of character if this game wants us to believe that she is someone who is kind-hearted, compassionate, and wants to fight for the greater good. And even if this was within MJ's character, by Peter's own morals of with great power coming with great responsibility, MJ is not at all in the right, yet the game treats her as such anyway.
First of all, he says that, like, MJ is kind of being an asshole to Peter here, and yes, I will agree, she kind of is. But he also acts like this is the exact situation that was happening in the past every time. Like, we have no context on what was happening in the past, so I don't even know why you brought that up. And the reasoning she gives as to why she broke up with Peter is because he was treating her like a baby. Word for word, what she says. We broke up because you wouldn't stop treating me like a baby all the time. Don't do this, MJ. Don't do that, MJ. Would Peter be in the right every time if every situation was just like what just happened? Yes, but we have no context on what was happening before this. So you're not making a point here. I'll give a good example of someone who probably will relate to this, because if you have a parent, you probably have been through this. How many times have you said you're gonna go out somewhere or do something with your friends, and your parent has berated you about it, saying, oh, just be careful, or I don't really think I want you to do this, you're not allowed to go, something like that? Does or does that not get annoying? So if Peter was always treating MJ like this, then yes, it would probably get annoying for her. But anyways, you're right, MJ shouldn't be lashing out on Peter like this, but people don't always do what you think they should be doing. I don't know if you've ever been in an argument with someone or like a person close to you at all, but you would know that people tend to lash out in a fit of emotion at times, and or hold certain grudges when they are too stubborn to get over it in their current mindset. And also in real life, this is always apparent in girls most of the time. Let's not act like girls don't sometimes burst out in fits of emotion and or treat someone like an asshole in certain situations. I think anyone that has had any experience with any girl, honestly, would know this. Also, think about the context of the situation. MJ did just sneak through a Sable base, making herself think that she is capable of this type of thing. It may be plot armor for MJ that she did this, but she still did it in game. And she just went through all this just to get to this information, and right when she was about to get this information, Peter comes in and swoops her out. Was Peter in the right here to do this thing? Yes. But MJ is mad at this point, and she lashed out in a fit of emotion, just like people in real life do. But later in the game, we see MJ's character develop past this outburst and like her misplaced way of thinking, and she admits that she was in the wrong.
MJ, if it weren't for you and Miles, I would have been...
As dead as I would have been the last 8,500 times you saved me. Pretty sure I still owe you a few.
That's smart.
Hey. I'm sorry I screwed things up. It's just hard being the one who always gets saved, you know? Sometimes I want to do the saving.
I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't. Still partners?
Always.
Funny how he played the clip of her admitting she was in the wrong and apologizing to Peter, while what was going on in that scene completely flew over his head. MJ may make some bad decisions in this game, but let's please stop acting like people don't make mistakes or do risky things. And earlier in the video, it tried to compare this MJ to the Raimi MJ, who was literally just a damsel in distress, and her character never really developed. While MJ in this game is acting way more like comic MJ than we've ever seen in the past, like, couple years of her recent adaptation. MJ in the comics was out here in the streets at night looking for Peter when he wouldn't come home, which is an example of comic MJ doing something dangerous or risky because she's not in the right headspace. She was shooting at Green Goblin, knocking out a dude who was threatening to blackmail her and Peter, helping Peter fight Kane Parker, helping Peter fight a big-ass robot, and the list just goes on. You could say some of the things that MJ does in this game is plot armor for her, but some things she does in the comics are also plot armor for her. So if you're not going to criticize comic MJ for having plot armor, but you're going to criticize this MJ for having plot armor when this is literally fiction, then what are we doing here?
Game then shows us that MJ is aware that the demons are after something at Grand Central Terminal.
But she's totally ignoring Grand Central.
Grand Central.
They're going there to get...
Anything else? Was he saying something about Grand Central before I jumped in?
He was... No. It was nothing.
Standish said the demons are looking for something at GCT. But what could they possibly need here? Should probably call Peter and let him know what I'm doing. Actually, scratch that. He'd probably just tell me to go home and chain myself to my laptop.
I'm sorry, I hate it when it does that. I'm sorry.
That place is highly populated, and the demons are shown to not only not care about civilian casualties, but will at times go out of their way to cause them. Now you may be thinking, holy shit, Peter needs to know about this because if something happens while Peter isn't there ready to handle it, so many people can die. And you'd be absolutely right. MJ herself even believes she should probably contact Peter, up until...
Scratch that. He'd probably just tell me to go home and chain myself to my laptop.
Scale of 9 to 10, how batshit nuts are you right now?
MJ, you absolute scumbag, by withholding this important information on what the demons are planning when she knows they intend to use a bioweapon against the entire city.
Except for the fact that she doesn't know shit about what's gonna happen at GCT, and I'll go over this a little bit more in a second, but I'll let him keep talking.
Demons to potentially cause more casualties than there needed to be. Did you even alert the authorities about this so they could at least evacuate the area or close it down temporarily so nobody gets caught in the crossfire? MJ has done something horrifically wrong here. Any civilians that get hurt or killed will be entirely MJ's fault, and her justification is that Peter will tell her to stay out of a situation where the demons will show up at and endanger her.
Yes, once again, I agree, MJ should have called Peter before going to Grand Central, but she was still angry with him at this point and not in the right headspace, and she wanted to try and prove that she could do something on her own without needing superhero help. And also, why are you acting like she has a complete grasp of the situation that's about to unfold? You act like she knew the demons were about to be there at that exact second. All she knew was that there might be something at Grand Central. She never got the full context of the situation from Standish. How could she have expected all the demons to just show up at Grand Central at this exact moment and do what they did? But I do agree that she should have called the police so that Grand Central was like ready for an attack. So you do have a good point on that front. But once again, she wasn't thinking clearly, and people make mistakes. I don't know why this guy acts, or anybody that acts like this. I don't know why people act like people in stories are supposed to make the 100% right decision every time. Like, what would be so interesting about that? People make mistakes, and that makes some things interesting. And like I said, her character developed, she realized she was in the wrong, and she never does anything like this for the rest of the game. But like I said, MJ couldn't have expected that the demons were going to attack right there in that moment. And she was just going there to try and figure out what Standish was talking about. Because again, she never got full context of the situation. And on top of that, the station was filled with people and security in this moment. How could she have expected the demons to just bust in without at least some type of conflict or fight arising before this hypothetical situation that would allow her and other people to remove themselves from said hypothetical situation? Because if there was like a fight going on or some shit outside, people would have the chance to run away if it was to happen. She doesn't know the demons will just come busting in like how they did, all stealthily and shit. And also, to further back this up, the demons and Martin Lee are in a speeding car chase across the city, which would definitely be on the news, and MJ is the type of person that's always on top of stuff that's going on in the city, so she would probably have known that this is happening and thought it was the perfect time to do what she's doing because the demons are preoccupied with the car chase. And she literally states right after that she was going to check things out quickly and then let Peter know what she found.
Go home and chain myself to my laptop. I'll just check things out quick and let him know what I find.
And when the demons do come busting in out of nowhere, she realizes she's in too deep, and she calls Peter immediately. It's not like she was out there trying to box the demons and save the day with her fists, as he made it out to seem in his video. Then he later tries to use the example of her going into Norman's penthouse to try and support this narrative, that the game wants us to think that Peter is in the wrong, but he leaves out the fact that MJ is developing past these types of situations. Because before she breaks into Norman's penthouse, she calls Peter to make sure that he can help before she does this.
Hey, I've been through the city, state, and federal databases. If this Devil's Breath lab does exist, it's off the books. The only other place I can think to look is in Norman's personal files.
I've already been through his office computer. Are you thinking his penthouse? That building's full of Sables, man. If they spot me, other residents could get hurt in a firefight.
I know, but I might be able to get in undetected. I can sneak in, find the lab's location, and get out. If anything goes wrong, I'll call you for backup.
Okay. It's risky. We need that location. Wait for me to get nearby, then make your move.
I'll be ready.
This is literally character development. And instead of doing stuff on her own, she's asking for help, unlike how she was before. And mind you, before this, Peter just witnessed MJ be capable of breaking into a Sable base undetected. So with this knowledge, he takes a risk and trusts MJ to help. And since Spider-Man is a fugitive at this point, he doesn't want to risk other people getting hurt in like a fight that would occur at like the Oscorp Tower or whatever the fuck building she was at. Which is the responsible thing for Peter to do. Because if he was to go in there, they would just shoot on sight. But with MJ, as shown in this scene, they will not shoot on sight. And even still, not with just MJ. The Sable militia isn't just shooting the common civilian on sight. Some of them may have been corrupt, but they weren't just shooting civilians on sight. And even if she was to just get caught and captured, she could just call Peter, and this would give him enough time to save her if this was to happen, which he literally does. Which is why he told her to wait till he gets close and not take the immediate risk of having civilians be shot if he was to show up. And this obviously ends up working out for both of them. What he's doing is making up hypotheticals instead of what actually happened. Sure, it's risky to do this, but at this point in the story, they're trying to stop Lee and Otto as quickly as possible. And it's not out of character for Spider-Man to take risks in desperate times. It's also not out of character for Peter to make mistakes, even at this point in his career. There's not a single Spider-Man story out there, whether he's old or young, where he doesn't make mistakes. That's one of the biggest themes of his character. But you read the comics, so you should know that, right? And another thing that discredits you saying that the game wants us to think that Peter is in the wrong, Peter states the obvious thing that we were all thinking in this moment.
We broke up because you wouldn't stop treating me like a baby. Don't do this, MJ. Don't do that, MJ. Oh, that's too dangerous, MJ. I may not have super spider powers, but I'm not made out of glass.
You snuck into the middle of an armed military... You know what? Can we not do this right now, please?
If the game wanted us to think that Peter was in the wrong, why would they make him say this? And Peter doesn't want to waste time arguing with MJ, because he's got other things going on at this moment.
I think it helped really, and at the same time, whereas like his story arc with her is like, he understands I may have superpowers, I may be super strong, but at the end of the day, I do need help. It's okay to lean on others. I think she learns, you know, at the end of the day, it's okay that he loves me and he's going to save me when I am in that moment. So like when she jumps off the balcony, that's her saying like, you know what, Pete, I need you now. Like, you know, you trusted me to go into Norman's place and get through the stabilization to get the information we need. Okay. But I'm going to trust you now to, you know what, I need you to save me. It's okay. It's okay. I've pushed that away for a while because I wanted you to prove to you that I could do this. But you know what? I'm also now going to say, I don't have superpowers and I need that help. So that they both actually learn something at the end of the day. And I think that's what, you know, at the very end, they are back together, that you see them kiss at the restaurant. So it's not just Peter changing to help save the relationship. It's actually she's changing as well. She's accepting the help, whereas for so long throughout the game, she was pushing away because she didn't want to be the one who's always saved.
It doesn't matter how big or small her mistake was in this situation. What matters is the showcase of MJ's character flaw at the beginning of this mission. The flaw that she thinks that she can do things on her own without needing help. And while she may be someone who wants to fight for the greater good, she still has flaws in the way that she does things and how she handles certain situations. And as the clip I've shown with one of the literal fucking creators of the game, this is her development throughout this game. She's moving on and growing from her flaws. You're trying to criticize what she was before, as if she doesn't develop throughout the game.
Let's assess the scene where she decides to meet with Peter for the first time in 6 months.
Let's not make this all about business. How's it going with you? Did you get that promotion?
Okay, this is good so far. She agrees to meet Peter out of a courtesy and she speaks to him in a friendly manner. She doesn't just focus on the important matter, she also focuses on trying to catch up with Peter, because he's still a person that she cares about, even if not romantically interested in him, right?
Why did you ask me here, Pete?
You know, just dinner between friends.
Friends. Is that what we are?
Okay, so now MJ decides to be an asshole out of nowhere. Why is she acting like Peter is overstepping any boundaries or unreasonable for meeting with her, like they're just friends having dinner, when she herself initiated a friendly conversation in the first place?
First of all, they haven't seen each other in 6 months, and the last time they saw each other, it was them breaking up. And Peter invited her out to dinner to a place where they normally went to eat when they were dating. And also, she's not acting like Peter is overstepping any boundaries. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'll talk about this more in a second.
And remember, people, any bitterness on her end is based on why they broke up, which I've already demonstrated to be unjustified.
But maybe we could be, you know, if that's what you wanted.
There's a lot of baggage here.
Yeah, sure, but is that so bad? I mean, baggage can carry good things too, like money and keys, and raspberry lip balm.
Do you remember why we broke up?
Why are you bringing this up, you insufferable child? You're just here as a courtesy and to engage in a friendly conversation, since you clearly still care about Peter as a person, then decide to bring up why you two broke up out of nowhere?
This just tells me that this dude has never spoken to a woman in his life. And you could say, oh, well, nice rebuttal, insulting someone instead of making a point. But no, I've never even been in a serious relationship with a girl, and I've still been in a situation like this before. MJ obviously still loves Peter and still wants to be with him, and that's expressed pretty much throughout this whole game. And by her saying this, she's obviously trying to rekindle a relationship because of the way things were left off with their relationship. And in order to continue being friends or get back into an actual relationship, you have to discuss problems and work those things out before your relationship can continue. Do they have arguments and sometimes petty arguments? Yes, but that's just how relationships are. And one of the focuses of this game is Peter and MJ still loving each other and working past their past mistakes and differences so that they can get back into a relationship and have that relationship be healthy unlike it was before. A relationship where Peter can be Spider-Man and MJ can do her thing and figuring out a way to make that work, and they do. And instead of MJ just being some damsel in distress that just sits at home all day being safe while waiting for Peter to get home for her to suck him off, she didn't want to just rush back into a relationship without doing what was done for the relationship in this game. And why would you want MJ to be like that? What about MJ being this little background character with no life goals or character to her? What about that makes MJ an interesting character? Sure as hell didn't make her interesting in the comic that you claim to know so much about, and her character development that I mentioned earlier stays consistent throughout the rest of the story.
This opening section is entirely broken on a plot level. Where do we begin? Well, I guess we'll start with the fact that the cops are after Kingpin, and they're only going after him 8 years later. But why is that? They never established what circumstances were different from then and now to warrant the cops breaking into his building with—
They do state the reason why they're doing it now, because it literally says they have a warrant. And as we all know, Fisk is a corrupt person that has ties with the police, so it's not hard to believe that it took forever to finally get enough solid evidence to get a warrant to investigate Fisk.
Spider-Man, especially when the game is telling us that they're trying to get this done by the book. Yuri even states that Spider-Man cannot be involved due to how Kingpin's lawyers are.
Yuri never states that Peter cannot be involved. She implies that she doesn't want Spider-Man involved because of Kingpin's lawyers, and I'll go over this more in a second.
She strongly emphasizes that this has to be done by the book.
Mind if I join in on the fun?
You know how your lawyers are. This one needs to go by the book.
Come on, Yuri. I've been waiting 8 years for this.
You really want to help? Head to Times Square. Sounds like his guys are trying to keep my backup from reaching the scene.
You got it. Almost there.
If Spider-Man is seen doing this, that would jeopardize the case and risk their ability to prosecute Kingpin. Why is Spider-Man allowed to do this? Spider-Man is the one who apprehends Kingpin.
Spider-Man isn't the one who apprehends Kingpin. He's the one who puts him in position to be apprehended. Why are you acting like Peter's the one out here reading him his Miranda rights and arresting him? And someone stopping someone from getting away isn't interfering with anything, because he was supposed to be arrested the whole time. Spider-Man stopping Fisk from evading police capture, which is against the law for Fisk to be doing, isn't anything off the book. Remember when Daredevil beat the shit out of Fisk so that he couldn't run away, and then Fisk is later arrested? This is the exact type of situation. She didn't want Spider-Man involved because she didn't want Fisk to be able to use Spider-Man being there as like some type of defense in court, but she gets desperate, which is why she lets Spider-Man help. Fisk ends up being arrested, so I don't even know why this is a point.
Because upon Spider-Man's arrival, he just watches and does nothing as literally all of this happens.
Insomniac wasn't intending for the audience to think that Spider-Man was just sitting there letting this happen. Sure, this scene was dragged on for a little bit, but it was intended for spectacle and to make the cops look helpless, and for Spider-Man to have a cool interest living off the hype of this opening scene. Not for little dweebs like you to think Spider-Man was just sitting there on the sidelines like, yeah man, I love watching cops get shot at. And this is just one of the extreme amount of nitpicks he brings up in this video.
All of these goons are wearing gear with Fisk logos on them. Fisk has just allowed there to be ties to him causing these shootings when the police already have a warrant to enter his building.
Maybe because Fisk's men are already shooting at the police, and it would be pretty obvious that they already are Fisk's men because they were in the building. And mind you, these people start shooting at the police before this happens. So either way, without his name being on these people in Times Square shooting at the police, either way, his men would be seen shooting at the police.
He throws the goon head first from a height that would not only severely injure him, but based on the strength of Spider-Man's throw and the fact that the goon is being thrown head first, he risks a deadly head injury by throwing this goon straight into another, assuming the first goon didn't hit his head on the ground first.
He tries to state multiple instances where Spider-Man is definitely killing people, and sure, honestly, this is true. Some of the things Spider-Man does in this game definitely should kill people, but for one, it's never actually confirmed that he kills anyone, and for two, this is fiction. I'm pretty sure you and one other person on this planet actually have a problem with this. If you can't suspend your disbelief for things that happen in fiction, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're already in the wrong genre, and this just isn't for you to begin with. And then you try to use the brain dead argument of saying, oh well, if you didn't like it in one thing, then you can't like it in this. This is a common thing that people try to do in arguments, and most of the time it's people taking things out of context, and that's exactly what he does here, with leaving out the context that Batman is confirmed to be killing these people in universe and by the goddamn writers. And if you have a problem with Spider-Man doing some crazy shit in this game where people should be dying but they're not, then I'm sorry to tell you, but you shouldn't like Arkham Batman. But Spider-Man doesn't actually canonically kill anyone in this game. And every other time that he tries to mention that Spider-Man is killing someone in this game is something that's only there because it looks cool and gameplay mechanics exist, just to make things more fun and enjoyable. And this isn't something that happens just in this game. Pretty much everything that deals with the main character who doesn't kill has instances where people could definitely be getting killed. But this is fiction and you have to suspend your disbelief for some things. Writer says he's not killing, even if it looks like people are dying.
Speaking of which, let's talk about how shitty of an organization Kingpin's entire criminal empire is. In his public building, he has a server room filled with incriminating evidence against him in a world with superheroes and supervillains that he just decided to keep accessible in an open and public area rather than a more secure and secretive area, kinda like what he does in Into the Spider-Verse. This is what allows Spider-Man to enter and download all of the incriminating evidence against Fisk, all because he didn't understand the importance of making incriminating evidence as secret as possible.
I think you forgot that in order for Fisk to actually be put in jail for this evidence, the evidence has to be acquired legally, you know, through something like a warrant. And you could say it's illegal for Spider-Man to be the one getting this information, but the cops could also say in court that Spider-Man wasn't the one that acquired this, and they just got it themselves. But Fisk knows that you have to be able to acquire evidence legally. And he also has security in his building 24/7, so that people can't break in and get this data, which is still secure and most likely on an encrypted file. And we see Kingpin erasing this data in the situation that the warrant actually arises, which is why he's erasing the data now.
Send more armed goons to attack Spider-Man as an escape is made. Why did Kingpin decide it was a good idea to just stand and watch while behind a barrier that Spider-Man could easily break open?
For one, Fisk probably didn't run away in this situation because, like, the crossfire of, like, the guns turned shooting at him might have gotten him killed, which is why he's behind armored glass. And he also probably wasn't expecting Spider-Man to be able to break this glass. He was expecting this trap to kill Spider-Man, which is why he placed it there.
And why is his first instinct to fight Spider-Man instead of using his men to stall an escape? Spider-Man is much stronger and more agile than Kingpin, while also having web shooters.
Because Kingpin thinks he can kill Spider-Man, which is why he fights him. I think that's pretty obvious.
Also, when he sends goons after Spider-Man during their fight, where the hell are their guns? Well, the only reason I can think of is because they might shoot Kingpin. Well, Kingpin, maybe that's another reason to get the fuck out of there and leave Spider-Man distracted by your men.
He knows Spider-Man would have probably just kept chasing him. There's no civilians around for Spider-Man to be distracted by Fisk men. And he obviously just watched Spider-Man dodge bullets with his turrets. And once again, he's annoyed with Spider-Man and wants to kill him.
Also, Kingpin is near dead from being blasted through the floor like that. His back will be in worse condition than Tobey's in Spider-Man 2. Especially with the massive kick from Spider-Man that would kill a regular human. And I know I'm going to hear that Kingpin has superhuman enhancements as a defense.
For one, Kingpin is obviously not just a regular human. He's been a peak human in pretty much every story about him, or at least from the comics that I've read. And if you actually read the comics, you would know he doesn't have superhuman enhancements, so I don't even know why you brought that up. And also, this is still fiction, and Kingpin is clearly being shown to be able to take these types of hits. Why are you bringing this up? This guy must really not be a fan of Batman, the Bat Family, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, the Punisher, Falcon, Kraven, Elektra, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Iron Man, because these are all characters that do crazy shit while still being human. But you know why there isn't 2-hour-long video essays about them? Because this is fiction.
Then we get to Otto's experiment. Due to Peter's lateness, Otto started without Peter. Once it goes wrong, electricity starts to spark everywhere. The situation has become dangerous and increasingly more unstable. Peter suggests aborting, and Otto just decides to say no at this point.
Not yet.
But wait, why not? If the Grant Committee sees this, it won't be good for Otto's ability to stay funded. At least if he takes the proper precautions, he's at a lower risk of losing funding. If he's caught with another violation, he gets closer to losing funding since there's only so many times he can be excused.
For one, before he thinks to abort, it's already going like exploding and it's going all electric and shit, so it already smell in there from what already occurred. And also, Otto wants to see this thing through so that when the Grant Committee does arrive and it will already smell because of what already happened, he could say that all this might have happened, but it was for a success. And also, this is another example of you expecting like people in stories should do the right thing all the time and never take risks and not make mistakes. And that's exactly what Otto's doing. He's taking a risk and he made a mistake. And scenes like this also tie directly into Otto's writing, because Otto is someone who has failed his whole life and has just been through so much shit, got the short end of the stick. And this is an example of one of those scenarios that builds up to him finally snapping towards the end of the game.
Let's talk about the existence of Oscorp surveillance towers. We need to address what it means for the world and the implications of how Spider-Man modifies them. Spider-Man is asked by Yuri to fix the Oscorp surveillance towers that have a city-wide reach. Yuri tells Spider-Man that the NYPD started using Oscorp surveillance towers this year. Spider-Man is aware of the concept of police corruption, and his most recent and notable example would be Wilson Fisk's Empire. These surveillance towers are meant to help direct police attention to crimes, but Peter modifies them. He states,
Bet I can modify these towers to track more than just crimes.
So initially, the Oscorp towers were only tracking crimes. It was Spider-Man who decided to modify them to track even more stuff, perhaps private material.
He was modifying these towers for himself, not the rest of the police. And Yuri also makes no mention that the towers are tracking anything new.
But also tap into the privacy of your everyday citizens. RFIDs have serious security and privacy concerns because they can easily be abused.
Hidden readers. Tags can be read from a distance, not restricted to line of sight, by readers that can be incorporated invisibly into nearly any environment where human beings or items congregate. RFID readers have already been experimentally embedded in floor tiles, woven into carpeting and floor mats, hidden in doorways, and seamlessly incorporated into retail shelving and counters, making it virtually impossible for a consumer to know when or if he or she was being scammed. Individual tracking and profiling. If personal identity were linked with unique RFID tag numbers, individuals could be profiled and tracked without their knowledge or consent. For example, a tag embedded in a shoe could serve as a de facto identifier for the person wearing it, even if item level information remains generic. Identifying items people wear or carry could associate them with, for example, particular events like political rallies.
Yeah, this whole argument is just based off misleading misinformation. Spider-Man states, I can modify these towers to track. Keyword track. These towers aren't RFID readers. And Spider-Man also doesn't gain the ability to get people's personal information tied to RFID signals after modifying these towers. Because Peter doesn't even know what his backpack is when the signal pops up. All he gets is a ping and location of the RFID tracker. He makes no indication or remark saying that they gave him personal information, saying something like, oh, this is Peter Parker's backpack. And also, if Peter could track people's personal information with this, don't you think he would have used this a lot throughout the game to track certain people? If he could really get personal information on people through these towers, then why doesn't he? Oh, it's because he clearly fucking can't. And either way, this whole argument is just stupid because, like I mentioned earlier, Peter modifies these towers for himself. Yuri makes no mention that these towers are tracking anything new. He also states in a live stream with his friends, where someone else makes this same point against him, that because of a side mission this game has, this confirms his point that Peter also modified the towers for the police as well. And he says that because Peter says, I prefer using these towers as the term sharing in that little conversation they had. Just go look up the side mission on YouTube if you want to see the whole conversation. But he thinks that Peter confirms this point when he brings up the word sharing, when the definition of sharing is to have a portion of something with another or other things. Like, you know what I mean. There's also many different forms of sharing, like that's pretty common sense. But anyways, the tower worker states that he is piggybacking off their system. She knows that he is using their system that is already in place, so even if Peter didn't make his personal modifications to these towers for his own personal use, he would still be piggybacking off the system that's already in place. And once again, this tower worker also makes no mention that he's modified these towers. And being how open she was to Spider-Man throughout their conversation in this side mission, I think she would have definitely made a remark that he modified the towers. But she doesn't, because he doesn't modify the towers for the police. And these towers are also not RFID readers. They track radio signals. What is an RFID? A radio frequency. Only these towers are only using these things for crime data. And it's also not very far-fetched to believe that Peter has encrypted his modifications on his end so that the police don't have access to these modifications, as he is a literal fucking genius, so it's not far-fetched to believe that he encrypted his end at all. And once again, even without making the argument that Peter only modifies these towers for himself, it really would not matter if he allowed the police to track anything new with these towers, because as I've mentioned, Peter cannot gain personal information on anybody throughout this game. He shows that in not one single fashion, form, or any way. All these towers can do is pick up RFID signals, not read them. And one more thing, just to keep further backing that this was a dumbass point for him to make. Technology in video games, or fiction in general, does not always work the same as it does in real life. So your argument that RFID readers in real life and what they are capable of is still not applicable to fiction. Just like how Spider-Man's web shooters wouldn't work in real life. Just like how Batman's grapple gun wouldn't work in real life. Just like how Iron Man's suit would not work in real life. Just like how tritium could not actually make a small sun in real life. And another thing about these towers is something that people try to use against Spider-Man's character in this game. Like, oh, Spider-Man supports the surveillance state. Like, Spider-Man has no control over this. And instead, he's using these towers for his own personal use so that he can use these towers to help the city out even more.
But anyway, let's break down every webbed up backpack of his that he not only allowed the NYPD to track, but also decided to do nothing about all these years despite having tracking dots on them so he doesn't lose them. Every instance he does this, he is risking his secret identity, thus damaging his character because he knows the consequences of his identity being known. His loved ones become an easy target for his villains and they'll be in great danger faster than you can say pizza time.
Oh my fucking god. I really hope I'm not the only one here that's just sitting here thinking, like, is this man really trying to criticize Spider-Man's character because of collectible backpacks for a video game that are literally just there to expand the lore of the Insomniac universe? If this is something you seriously thought people were actually gonna take seriously as a criticism, you actually have like a fucking monkey brain. Like actual fucking baboon brain. I've actually never heard a single soul bring this up about the backpacks. Maybe because 9 out of every 10 person will realize that these are literally just collectibles in a video game and not meant to be taken that seriously.
Apparently he kept Sandman stuck in a tiny container unattended somewhere, which is not only reckless, but also a needlessly cruel way to punish Sandman.
I'm sorry, you think Sandman is that big? Do you know anything about Sandman? Parts of his body are like living organisms, I guess. He's kind of like Venom. This doesn't mean Sandman's entire body is inside this vial. It's probably locked up somewhere else or some shit.
I am losing patience. Where is the file?
Firstly, how did the demons know that there was even a file on Devil's Breath in Fisk's auction house? Not just that it was in the auction house, but also that it was in the statue.
Where's the statue?
I don't know, maybe because Martin Lee has been planning this stuff for years, and he's obviously been studying and gaining information on Fisk and Norman in this time before just brainlessly terrorizing the city and doing stuff without a plan. Judging by his grudge against Norman, and his knowledge of Fisk properties, warehouses, equipment gained from him throughout the game, it's not far-fetched to think that Martin Lee had like spies inside Fisk's organization or something, or is just actively getting information on Fisk. Why do you think he waits to start his plan until Fisk gets arrested? Because he obviously wasn't just a random civilian with the random information. He knew Fisk had certain things, and he knew Fisk was corrupt. Because I don't know if you knew this, his entire army couldn't have just shown up overnight from Asia, so he obviously already had men stationed throughout the city helping him get this inside information. And like I just said, Martin has been planning this stuff for years, which is why all his plans and stuff are so well executed throughout this game.
So we learned that MJ went to the auction house to get information for the story. She takes some pictures, then is told to leave after she uses the bathroom. She sneaks up on the door with the statue and... Wait a fucking minute. This fucking door doesn't require a passcode of any kind? Did she even use a key to enter it initially? Oh wait, she didn't. What the fuck is this dogshit security?
How do you know this door doesn't have a lock? How do you know she didn't unlock the door before she walked in it before? How do you know she didn't make a mistake and not lock the door right after she just walked out?
Like I said about Fisk's server room, this is a world with superheroes and supervillains with their own agendas and desires, as well as other rival criminal organizations. Anybody that wants to break in could easily enter this room. In fact, why the fuck would this room with the statue be in an area where it's so openly known to be within Fisk's possession?
What reason does someone who doesn't know what's inside this statue, due to not having any inside information, have to go into this auction house and steal this exact statue? How would someone with no information even know the statue is at this auction house? As I described earlier, we know why the demons know what's in here, but why would anyone else know what's inside this statue? What reason would they even have to steal this statue in the first place? How would someone even know the statue's even there in the first place? It's not out in the open like the rest of the things in the auction. Also, Fisk knows he has control over this city, and probably no one would even step to him or do anything towards him, because everyone in the city is scared of him. Fisk may be smart, but he also has an ego, and that ego is what gets him in jail or like gets caught most of the time in most of his stories. If you don't want to read the books, just go watch Daredevil or go watch Spider-Man 1994, the animated series. Also, another form of media that also parallels to this, in Andor, the Star Wars show, if you've watched it, they explore that it's not as hard to mess with the Empire as one might think because of their ego. Their egos are so high that they think that no one would even try and be stupid enough to even like phase them or try to go against them. If you haven't watched Andor, just watch the show, but like I think you can kind of understand what I'm saying. But that comparison of the Empire and the Star Wars world and like the show of Andor is a really good parallel / comparison to Fisk in this game and is also his other adaptations.
You just walk in like you belong.
Takes more than that, doesn't it?
What, to steal from the Empire? What do you need? A uniform, some dirty hands, and an Imperial toolkit. They're so proud of themselves, they don't even care. They're so fat and satisfied. They can't imagine it.
Can't imagine what?
That someone like me would ever get inside their house, walk their floors, spit in their food, take their gear.
This material would not have been easily accessible and kept between Fisk and this woman. Not only should it not be possible for the demons to know where this file was, but they shouldn't even have been able to know there was a file within Fisk's possession, as they have no way of knowing about Fisk's private blackmail material that he would have kept for himself.
See, now he just contradicts himself. He first asks how would the demons get this information on the Devil's Breath and the statue, as the information would be kept under wraps, which I already explained how the demons would get this information, and then he says this.
Why the fuck would this room with the statue be in an area where it's so openly known to be within Fisk's possession?
It's funny how you're trying to criticize a game's writing while also not seeing how dumb your writing in your own script is.
Why isn't this blackmail material kept in a more secure area?
First of all, this was one of Fisk's belongings. Fisk was having all his belongings moved to the auction house, but the cops were probably checking the belongings before they could be sent. Fisk probably had corrupt cops check and move this statue to the auction house, so it would look natural with all the other belongings and not be out of place, as if he was to move it to another location or something like that. That would have probably been searched. So this statue looks natural at the auction house. And this statue isn't out with the rest of the other things so that it can be sold, because he probably doesn't want anybody to obtain this item because of this exact reason. He was probably planning on moving this statue to a more secure location after all the searches from the police were done. Even MJ questions why this statue is here, because Peter told her in the past this statue was used to hide evidence, and Peter couldn't interfere with police operations such as checking evidence, and he probably just expected the cops would do their damn job. And I doubt Peter kept this exact statue in his memory when he has a mountain of other things going on in his life. And also, to further back up that one of Martin Lee's like inside men could have found out that Fisk uses the statue to hide certain evidence, if Peter knows that this statue hides evidence, then someone inside Fisk's operations would also know this. Also, if MJ had to get a key to like get into this door, it would just drag out this mission even longer, which would disrupt the pacing of the game. And mind you, this game isn't focused on Wilson Fisk this entire time. They're pushing the focus to someone who's about to play a bigger role in the story, such as the demons and Martin Lee. You know how boring it would have been to backtrack and get a key to open this door? This mission was already being dragged out longer than it should have been, and going to get a key would have just been boring and would have brought the game's pacing to a grinding halt. This door being unlocked wasn't supposed to be looked at as Wilson Fisk is stupid. This segment of the game was supposed to just push the plot forward. Once again, you're looking way too deep into something that's not supposed to be looked at deep into, and you're nitpicking.
Don't stop to talk, don't stop to talk, don't stop to talk, don't stop to talk, don't stop to talk.
Hi, Herman.
Seriously?
Okay, first off, how the fuck did Shocker hear Spider-Man from that far away? Unless we're led to believe that Spider-Man's delivery undersells how loud he actually was in canon, and he went out of his way to make sure he fucked up the element of surprise.
They made it blatantly clear he obviously heard what he said. Why even bring this up? Once again, you're nitpicking and appealing to reality in a fictional story. Also, Spider-Man doesn't go out of his way to mess up the element of surprise. Shocker sees him just arrive as he jumps out the window and looks at him. So he was already aware that Spider-Man is there, and Peter arrives just as Shocker jumps out the window. So there was no element of surprise.
Regardless, Spider-Man should not have pulled his CW flash and stopped to greet Shocker when Shocker is an active threat. When Peter arrives, there is literally an upside-down car on fire due to Shocker's arrival. Spider-Man has fought Shocker before and knows how dangerous he is. This is not a game, yet Spider-Man has once again decided to treat it as one. By doing so, he just allowed Shocker to blast through some cars and risk casualties. And what pisses me off about this is that throughout this entire chase, when Spider-Man has intentions of reasoning with Shocker, at no point does he appeal to the amount of casualties Shocker is causing. If Spider-Man wants to appeal to reason, he needs to press on the amount of casualties being caused. Even worse, a lot of what Spider-Man says are just jokes, insults even, as people are getting killed left and right. This is how you escalate things.
So let me get this straight. This man has been trying to criticize Spider-Man's comic accuracy and characterization, and then he criticizes him doing the most Spider-Man thing possible by making jokes to try to throw off his villains with insults. Spider-Man isn't a fucking therapist. What do you think Spider-Man is going to say that's just gonna make Shocker just stop in his tracks? You think he's gonna be like, Shocker, I know about Martha.
Why did you say that name?
Also, I like how he's just assuming people are dying when it's never stated anyone actually is. And he's also acting like Spider-Man is just letting him get away and cause all this destruction. Like he's not actively chasing him. And he keeps saying, don't stop to talk, don't stop to talk. As if Spider-Man isn't actively trying to figure out why Shocker's doing what he's doing. Meaning he would want to talk to him. And you just wanted Spider-Man to become a fucking therapist. To try and reason with Shocker. And then you're saying, don't stop to talk. When Spider-Man knows he's not going to be able to reason with Shocker because he already knows him. So instead, he does what Spider-Man does. And makes jokes towards his enemies to distract them mentally. But since you apparently read Spider-Man's comics, you should know why Spider-Man makes jokes when he's fighting his enemies. It's to distract them and throw them off. So you should know you sound dumb by saying this. Yet again, proving you clearly don't know shit about what you're talking about when it comes to Spider-Man's characterization.
Spider-Man even has Shocker pinned, then stops to talk with Shocker instead of just webbing him up like he does at the end of the fight.
Spider-Man making a mistake and underestimating someone he's already fought before, causing himself or others to maybe get hurt because of this mistake. I'm trying to remember where I'm thinking of this from. I think it was a book. It was about this guy who was in a red and blue costume with black lines on it. He was like a spider-themed superhero or something. I don't remember where I saw it. And like you just mentioned, Spider-Man learns from his mistakes and webs up Shocker to talk to him. And it's not like Peter wasn't trying to stop Shocker right here. He thought he had Shocker pinned and he didn't because he underestimated him.
Shocker gets broken out of prison by a prison guard corrupted by Martin Lee. They seem to be adamant on having Shocker rob banks, but Shocker gets stopped on both occasions, and the demons aren't even short on resources or anything. What they need to facilitate their plan are information, firearms, Martin Lee's powers, and Devil's Breath. So I'm left wondering what the purpose of breaking out Shocker was, as well as giving him information that they would kill him if he spoke up about it.
There's two reasons why they could be robbing this bank. Number one, they need fucking money like that. And number two, this is also something that would contribute to the city being under attack, which would further go into Martin's plan of trying to make Norman out to seem like he is not a good mayor because he doesn't have the city under control because these attacks are happening, stuff like that. And this is also prevalent with all these city crimes that pop up throughout the city that are the demons.
Day trading. It's all the rage.
Web him up, web him up, web him up, web him up, web him up. You just let him escape, you fucking idiot. When you have Shocker in a position where he's restrained, take advantage of it instead of just standing there and horsing around.
He actually makes a good point here. Spider-Man, what the fuck are you doing? But then not even a minute later, he says this.
You're freaking me out, Herman. It's not like you to be afraid of people.
Not even sure these guys are people. Could be anything under those masks.
Wait, Did you say Max?
Shocker, you just made a point about how if you talk, you're dead. Why did you engage in conversation about the people you're not supposed to be talking about?
Maybe because, like I mentioned earlier, Spider-Man annoys his enemies, which throws them off mentally, and Shocker slipped up here and said something he wasn't supposed to, which shows that Spider-Man got into his head, which is why he makes these jokes in the first place.
Also, Spider-Man, you have no fucking idea that Shocker could survive a falling metal beam crashing onto him. Not all of his suit is armored, and Shocker's suit gets powered down, so he can't even resist with his powers. Shocker could have been crushed to death by this, and it'd be Spider-Man's fault. Way to go, hero.
Except for the fact that he probably does know Shocker can survive this because he's in an armored suit, and I don't know where you got the fact that his entire suit isn't armored. Where does it say that? Some parts of his armor just may be stronger than others, and I don't even know why you bring up this point because he literally fucking survives it, showing us he can survive something like this, and Spider-Man probably knew this. And also, for the I don't even know how many time you've done this now, you're appealing to fucking reality in fiction.
And that's what they call bringing down the house.
But it seems that the demons have already beaten Spider-Man and Officer Davis there. How is that? Oh, because Kingpin was so fucking stupid that he casually had a back door that could easily be busted open, meaning an intruder could have just skipped the series of security measures that Spider-Man and Officer Davis had to deal with.
Oh boy, do you not have fucking eyeballs. This is a locked door secured by another big-ass locked door to this warehouse. And it's also supposed to be being secured by security. Why are you acting like Kingpin is just leaving this shit out on the street? Also, once again, Martin Lee probably had spies in Fisk organization. And like I mentioned earlier, so they know the ins and outs of Fisk properties.
Spider-Man and Davis spot the demons, and instead of both cars choosing to drive away as soon as possible in hopes of losing them, only one drives away, but one of them stays.
I don't know, maybe because the truck that didn't leave was either not that important, and by them staying, it still does exactly what they would have done by leaving in two different directions. It would have just been actively delaying Spider-Man from pursuing one of the trucks. So either way, one staying and distracting Spider-Man or going in two different directions is something that would delay Spider-Man. So both scenarios would have served the same purpose. And like, are y'all seeing how stupid these fucking nitpicks are? Do you know how boring this game's story would be and like action scenes would be if this guy was writing the fucking story? Like, oh my fucking god, bro. Stuff like this can be applied to so many fucking pieces of media, it's fucking insane.
Okay, that first demon he kicked out is dead. Absolutely dead. Not only was he swing kicked out of a speeding vehicle in the stomach by fucking Spider-Man, but he also would have hit a wall at a great velocity. Spider-Man has once again broken his no-kill rule.
I think the funniest thing about all this is he is playing a game based off a character who got bit by a radioactive spider to get his powers. Peter surviving that radioactive bite is just as logical as this thug surviving something like this. And once again, these things are literally just there to look cool and not make you think that Peter is fucking killing these people, when it's never confirmed he kills fucking anyone. Also, if Spider-Man was killing people, don't you think, this guy would have said something about it? Oh, but he doesn't. I wonder why. I'm honestly not surprised at the type of nitpicks and shit that he's bringing up, because like if you listen to his fucking voice, this dude just sounds fucking depressed. You sound like he's got a fucking bagel lies in his throat when he talks. Like, it's okay, that demon is dead. Not only was he swing kicked out of a truck by Spider-Man.
Lee's plan at City Hall is fucking ridiculous. I suppose the idea was to warn Osborn of the bombing so he would leave, which would give him the basis to construct a narrative that he knew of the attack but said nothing and only cared for his own safety.
And where was Norman during all this? Slinking like a rat. He knew what was going to happen, and he fled.
Firstly, all Norman would have to do to invalidate that narrative is yell at everyone to get out of here because it's dangerous.
Yeah, no shit Norman could do that. Except for the fact that Norman has no clue what Martin's plan was. All Norman got was a threat on his phone from someone, so he got to safety. He didn't know Martin Lee was about to bomb the rally. He just heard a threat towards his life and ran away. You bringing this up literally does the opposite of what you think it's doing, because it shows how smart Lee's plan was. He made an open-ended threat towards Norman, knowing how selfish of a person he is, and then when Norman gets himself to safety, it makes it easy for Martin to spread the narrative that he wants to spread. You brought up this point as if Martin got on the phone and said, "Yo, Norman, I'm finna blow this hoe up."
Also takes part in the attack without any form of masking his identity, yet later in the game, we see him trying to conceal his identity and kill Peter as a means of covering up a loose end. This allows Peter to find out that Lee is involved with the demons, and what makes this even worse is that the game tells us that deep down, despite all the lies and deception, Lee still believed in his mission at Feast, and truly did care about May. If he truly cared about his mission at Feast, then why was he planning attacks that would get so many innocent people killed? Not just City Hall, but also Devil's Breath, which would cause a global pandemic and risk killing Aunt May, someone we know he cares deeply about. Martin Lee's plans aren't just nonsensical on a logistical level, but they assassinate him on a character level.
They don't assassinate anything. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? For one, Martin Lee's plan was to bring down Norman and then kill him. And for two, Martin is being corrupted from the dark energy inside of him. Pause. And the more he goes down this path, the more his internal darkness he's held in for so long consumes him. And the whole point of his writing in this game is him showing that evil part of himself that he kept contained for this whole time. And so in turn, his feelings and rage for Norman bring him out of character, to the point where he's someone completely different, because he wants to get revenge. And he's doing whatever he needs to do to get to that goal. And him acting out of character is the exact point of his writing. Like, what do you not understand about that? You fundamentally misunderstood his writing. And for three, in the exact note that you're referencing, Lee literally states he knows he's going to do some crazy shit to go through with his plan. And that note was for May to see that the good person Martin Lee was before wasn't a complete front, and that before this he actually cared about people and tried to do the right thing, despite the darkness inside of him still eating him up during this time. And lastly, what is there to suggest that Lee was trying to cover up his identity? Since once again, in the note you clearly had to have looked at, it clearly shows that Martin will know his identity will be revealed by the end of all this. He brings up the fact that Martin corrupts the homeless people outside to attack Peter, but I think he would obviously know that Peter will be able to run away or run inside right behind him. And mind you, before this happens, he made a threat to Peter that if he didn't stay away from this, he might get hurt. So in this situation, this would just be Lee giving Peter even more of an incentive to back off of this situation so that he doesn't get hurt. If Martin Lee didn't really want Peter as a loose end, then I think he would have went to a greater length to make sure Peter is actually dead, other than putting him in a situation where he could possibly get away. And you also talk about how that Lee's plans might affect Aunt May like the Devil's Breath, but like I just mentioned a couple seconds ago, Martin is doing whatever he can to bring down Norman, so I doubt he's thinking on any impacts that this Devil's Breath might have on other people, mind you, because he's corrupted at this point and not thinking all the way clearly. His writing clearly shows that he is in a misplaced way of thinking from what he previously was, and now he is turning into someone completely different due to the darkness that he's been holding on for so long and now finally releasing.
Especially when we consider that if his entire goal was to make Norman suffer, he could have just corrupted Norman's guards like he did to a prison guard to break out Shocker, then used them to kidnap Norman.
First of all, if Lee was to corrupt Norman, it could easily be spun into Norman saying that Lee made him say these things. Second of all, Lee's plan wasn't to kidnap Norman. He wasn't trying to torture him physically, he was trying to bring down his legacy. And also, this guy that just offed himself wasn't corrupted by Martin Lee. Martin Lee has to physically touch someone to corrupt them. When he turns all like black and white and shit, that was an example of him using the powers that Martin Lee just granted him. He wasn't corrupted. Just like all the demons aren't corrupted by Martin Lee. They just have his powers because he granted it to them, because that's one of his powers. People who are corrupted by Norman are shown to have that dark energy resonating off of them, just like the homeless people. So if he was to corrupt someone and kidnap Norman either way, it's not like Norman wouldn't suspect something is off with his guards because they would literally be black and white. Like, what? And it would also be harder for Martin Lee to try and get inside men on Norman's operations, because Norman is a city official, and security for city officials have to go through certain background checks, unlike Fisk's men who are mostly criminals. And Fisk also relies on fear to keep his men in check as well. But having a criminal record makes it very hard to work security, or anything for that matter, when it comes to government officials. And especially in Norman's case, he would definitely make it a point to not have any past criminals working for him, especially in a position where they are literally the ones protecting his life. And I'm not saying Martin didn't have anyone inside on Norman's things, because shown with the deputy mayor, he clearly did, but it would be extremely hard for him to get to people who are closer to Norman without doing things like the things he was doing in this game, like when he went after Charles Standish, Dr. Delaney, and Dr. Morgan Michaels. He waited to go after people like this because of Fisk's control over the city and his connection to Norman, which is why he waited for so long, and waited for Fisk to be put in jail to move forward with his plan so that Fisk couldn't stop him from these plans. It would be easier to get in on Fisk's operations, because as we all know, he runs his operations through criminals that work for him. That's why he's called the Kingpin of Crime, so it would be easier for Martin to sneak one of his men into Fisk's organizations. But it wouldn't be as easy to get into Norman's operations, because he runs things in a different way than Fisk does. Norman doesn't rely on fear to control the city, but Fisk does.
Since we know corrupting people effectively mind controls them. Not even just an admission due to corruption, but since Lee knows Norman is still working on Devil's Breath and has files on it, corrupt Norman into going through all his records and files that would be incriminating. And you know what that means? If Lee tried to corrupt Norman into releasing incriminating information on himself, that means he would have found the video where Norman gets Lee's parents killed, which would also prove that Norman covered up their deaths for decades. Not only will Norman have to live with the entire city turning on him, But Oscorp could be shut down entirely since the information of Devil's Breath is said to be damning enough that it could get Oscorp shut down.
To Lee's knowledge, the only thing incriminating on Norman is the Devil's Breath. How would Martin Lee know Norman has a video of Martin Lee's experiment? And even still, Martin Lee knows something like Devil's Breath has the potential to be incriminating, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it also has the chance to bring down Norman and his public image. And even still, the Devil's Breath is not 100% incriminating, because in an actual legal court, they would have to prove this is something actually manufactured by Oscorp, instead of something that Martin actually made and pinned on Norman, or was evidence planted on Norman, which can be battled in court. And any admission coming from corruption isn't something valid in court, because like I mentioned earlier, it can be argued that Lee made someone say something that's not true, so that's not applicable in court. And even if Norman was to get out of legal trouble, which he does, there's still the court of public opinion, and the narrative that Lee was trying to construct at the City Hall bombing would also contribute to the court of public opinion. And Lee knows this, which is why his plan was to expose Norman to the public and then just kill him, so that he would die with a tarnished legacy. And I'd also like to add, if Spider-Man didn't stop Martin Lee, his plan would have worked. And the proof of that is what happens after the game to Norman, because Otto was the reason that Martin Lee's plan came to fruition.
The whole project has gone to hell. TR-27 is a cure, not a disease. But try telling that to the evening news. Somehow, they've picked up the technician's morbid nickname, Devil's Breath, and are using it to stoke hysteria.
You know, looking at the dark days just behind us, most of the people involved have faced consequences. Otto Octavius is in prison. Mayor Osborn resigned in disgrace.
Also, not only did Norman resign as mayor due to the public backlash, his company's stock would have also plummeted, because a company's stock also ties into the public image of said company. So Martin Lee's plan did work. It was just Otto who helped that plan come to fruition.
Even if Oscorp doesn't get shut down, what is stopping Lee from breaking out Shocker again and using his shock gauntlets to destroy Oscorp properties like Doc Ock sends villains to do later? Lee could even break out all sorts of villains and have them destroy Oscorp for him while under corruption.
Bro, who do you think Martin Lee is? Fucking Superman? How the fuck do you expect him to break all these supervillains out of the raft? He would have to fight the cops, the raft guards, and Spider-Man just to break these villains out of the raft. And mind you, in order for him to get to the raft, which is on an island in the middle of the river, he would have to go on like a helicopter or something, and that's restricted airspace and his helicopter could be shot down. For one, the supervillains who are mentally strong enough can resist Martin Lee's corruption. And for two, the only reason he was able to break out Shocker was because he was in a less secure prison. Shocker was being held in Rikers.
No worries. Herman's just a big cupcake. I'll have him back in Rikers by bedtime.
And Martin Lee's goals isn't to destroy Oscorp buildings. It's to bring down Norman and his legacy. And another thing you mentioned in your video is Martin Lee doing things that would take innocent lives. Yet you want him to destroy buildings that have innocent people in them and could possibly get people on the street killed. So what is your logic here, bro? And the only reason Doc Ock was able to break out the other villains out of the raft was because he knew about their security systems. And he was planning this with the villains before he broke in. That would be a completely different scenario than if Martin was to try and go break into the raft. Which Martin has no reason to, because like I just said, his plan wasn't to destroy Oscorp buildings, it was to bring down Norman as a person. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
But even worse, Peter's spider sense goes off and he checks out the area. Peter sees Lee and another demon, which is why Peter knows of Lee's involvement later in the game. Warn them, warn them, warn them, warn them, warn them, warn them, warn them. Strategic fucking genius. Remember guys, this is the best Spider-Man adaptation.
His spider sense goes off, and not knowing what it is, he goes to see what it is. He sees the demon in the distance, then he sees Martin Lee, which is something that would definitely have messed with him mentally because of his relationship with Martin Lee before this point. So I think it's pretty obvious that Peter was just shocked in the moment, and he was having a normal human emotional reaction. One of the things that makes Spider-Man so relatable as a character is the fact that he isn't perfect. And throughout most of the points that you've mentioned, like this far that I've covered, you've been acting this whole time like Peter is supposed to act like this perfect human being, when once again one of the main themes of his character is that he is human and he makes mistakes. But let's just keep going through the scene real quick, because he shouldn't even have mentioned this in this video because it was a brain dead point to make. After looking at Martin Lee, and mind you, he is still shocked at this point, his spider sense picks up danger from another location. So now we're in a state where Peter is being shocked with emotion and his spider sense is going crazy. So his mental state is going fucking crazy right now. I'm gonna break this down scene by scene. See Peter, he looks at Martin Lee. His spider sense picks up something over here where he sees no identifiable danger. And then when we get to this point, this is where we stop seeing things from Peter's POV. So after Peter looks in this direction real quick, which we can see right here. We can see he was swiveling his head back to this other direction towards Martin Lee, and then his spider sense from the other direction probably gets stronger. And like I mentioned, his mental state is going crazy right now. Then not even a second after this, the bomb goes off. So Peter legitimately has no time for it to even matter if he was to say look out. So what he does is, once he sees the first bomb go off, he immediately looks for MJ to shield her from the blast. Peter can either attempt to scream look out while there are bombs going off, so his voice would have been at risk of not even being heard in the first place. He's also pretty far away from Jefferson Davis, unlike Miles was. Or he can rush to MJ and make sure she doesn't get hurt. But she made a hell of a good point here, my man. Real nice job. Like, I actually find it hard to believe that you thought this was a smart thing to put in your video.
So, you guys remember the scene in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 that everybody hates? Yes, this scene, where Spider-Man is actively delaying himself to make jokes instead of preventing casualties as quickly as possible? Well, you're gonna fucking love this.
Kitchen floor?
Where do you want me to,
Just a couch is fine.
See you later?
Yeah.
This man is trying to compare Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man making jokes and doing legitimately nothing when he can to try and stop a truck that's speeding into oncoming traffic and is carrying a highly explosive material, and he's aware of this, to a scene that takes 25 seconds and is meant for a cute little character moment between Peter and MJ. Once again, he's giving this argument where he's like, oh, well, if you didn't like it in this thing, you shouldn't like it in this thing, while not adding context to the fucking situation. And I don't think you think that people criticize this scene in the way that you think they criticize it for. Let's take a look at the Andrew Garfield moment and why people are mad at it.
What you got for me today, New York?
Reporting live from New York 1 Chopper. An Oscorp truck carrying plutonium has been hijacked. A police chase is in progress.
All right, let's get to work.
Okay, so we see Andrew landing on the car, knowing it's carrying plutonium, and his first instinct is this.
Mr. Criminal. Hey, my name is Spider-Man. You can call me Webhead. You can call me Amazing. Just don't call me late for dinner. Get it? Not a shaker. You a hugger? I'm killer. Oh, okay.
So throughout this entire thing, he's doing literally nothing to even remotely try and stop this car. I don't have a problem with the fact that he's making jokes, as long as he is doing something to try and stop this car. The next thing we see him do is, oh, dude runs out of ammo. Let me steer the car. Okay, honestly, steering the car is a good idea. Except for the fact that he should not even have to steer this car. This dude should have already been thrown out of the car and webbed up to like the side of a building or some shit. He could have easily opened this door, grabbed this guy, and thrown him out of the truck and webbed him to the side of a building or some shit, where he would have easily been able to get in the car and just slam on the brakes, chase scene over. So now we see Spider-Man see him run through multiple cars and witness a man almost get fucking taken out by one of these cars, and he sits here and stops to talk with him. Now, after getting the plutonium out of the truck, and mind you, the truck is still like running through traffic at this point, he sits on this cop car, still doing nothing about the truck that's running through traffic, and he hops on the phone with my wife, Gwendolyn Maxine Stacy. Now we see him get back onto the truck, and he's still making literally no effort to try and stop this truck. He is still sitting here making jokes and doing literally nothing to try and stop this car. Then when he starts trying to stop the car, he's punching the front fucking window instead of going to the open window he knows is on the side. This causes this truck to crash into a bus full of people and almost hit 2 people on the street. If you think these two scenes are comparable, there's something wrong with your brain, even though I think we've already established that.
Let me show you a series of examples where Spider-Man jokes while taking down the threat or saving people, which I have absolutely no issues with.
Set him down, tough guy. Hey, kiddo, let mom and dad talk for a minute, will ya?
So now we're either biased or we just hate Spider-Man in general. I honestly can't tell judging by this dude's YouTube account. So you don't have a problem with Tobey's Spider-Man not hitting Green Goblin while he's an active threat while he has the jump on him from behind, but you have a problem with Insomniac Spider-Man making a joke to when he greets Shocker earlier in the game. Wow, I mean, like, this is one hell of a video we're watching. I can only imagine why your like to dislike ratio looks like this. Spoiler alert, it's not because that they're mad that you called their favorite game bad. It's because you're making the most fucking brain dead points in the fucking world. Also, later in the video, he mentions this.
The same happens with Scorpion, where he was only given a 1-second heads up before getting grabbed by Scorpion. And when Spider-Man is grabbed by Scorpion, he decides it's a good time to joke with him about his phone call instead of, webbing him in the face or something.
So he has a problem with this scene as well, but then on the list of scenes where he lists where he doesn't have a problem with, he mentions this scene.
Getting on my nerves. I have a knack for that. Not anymore.
So we have two situations where Spider-Man is grabbed and he makes a joke, but you have a problem with one scene and you don't have a problem with the other. Okay, I mean, but let's keep going.
What's up, guys? Forget your PIN number?
So once again, you don't have a problem with a scene where Spider-Man makes a joke instead of hitting the enemies while they're off guard, but you have a problem when Insomniac Spider-Man does it. Okay, I mean, like, if this is the logic we're going here, I mean, you're really making a great argument as to why Spider-Man PS4 is a bad story. I mean, like, this is a fantastic argument. And just so y'all know, I legitimately have no problems with any of these scenes. I don't have a problem with Tobey's scenes, I don't have a problem with Tom's scenes, and I don't have a problem at all with Insomniac Spider-Man scenes. You know why? Because this is in character for Spider-Man. But this guy just, I don't even know.
You see, there's a massive difference between the series of examples I've just showed you and literally pausing and delaying yourself for the sake of a stupid joke. Those two aren't the same, and if you aren't willing to accept that clear distinction, have fun trying to criticize that scene in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, let's see what this is about. Peter is wasting time here while someone could be hurt or killed. That is true. Let's see his counterexample. Spider-Man facing Kingpin and Into the Spider-Verse. Okay, let's see the reasoning behind this. Miles can go invisible and leave anytime he wants. Can Kingpin see through invisibility now? Also, Kingpin can't swing webs and catch up to Spider-Man. You mentioned that he can leave anytime he wants. Oh, you mean like what he was about to do but couldn't because Kingpin grabbed his head? Which led to him attempting to go invisible, only for it not to work because he doesn't have enough stamina left to carry out that ability? It's almost like you had to neglect context for this bullshit whataboutism.
There's no way you're this dumb. There's just no way you're this fucking dumb. You talk about neglecting context, yet you did that twice throughout this video with whataboutism when you mentioned the Andrew Garfield moment and you also mentioned the people who have a problem with Batman killing in the DCEU. You're neglecting context for both of those examples you show. And since you're someone who also likes to appeal to reality, why are you not mad about the fact that Miles doesn't use his super strength to overpower Kingpin? The fucking irony in your fucking criticisms. Like, this is just holy shit. I'm willing to bet my entire YouTube channel, I mean, it's not saying much, but I'm willing to bet anything that if this was Insomniac Spider-Man in this situation with Kingpin where he doesn't overpower him, we would have had to hear his depressed-ass voice on the mic talking about some Spider-Man, you have super strength. Overpower Kingpin. Spider-Man, your spider sense should have warned you that Kingpin was about to grab your head. Why are you not dodging it and you're actively delaying yourself to get to the button to stop the multiverse from shutting down? I also love how in the final battle of Into the Spider-Verse, they stop to talk with each other and make jokes multiple fucking times throughout the entire fucking battle.
Wow, isn't it lucky that the demons miss literally every last one of these shots?
Wow, isn't it lucky when that happens in fucking every action movie ever? Like, bro, like, these are the points that are taking up this video's runtime. When I told you in the beginning of the video that his video is filled with 90% fucking nitpicks, stupid appeals to reality, and mind-numbingly stupid arguments, I was not lying to you.
Don't stop to talk, 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 don't stop to talk.
Show's over, Lee.
Fuck you, you stupid motherfucker. Also, go after them. Stop just standing around doing nothing.
So you want Spider-Man to barge into a room full of armed guards where a fight could break out, bullets would be sent flying everywhere, where Dr. Delaney could be inadvertently shot and killed in the process. My god, you fucking love contradicting yourself.
MJ tells Peter about the information from the Devil's Breath file.
Yeah, get this. A few years ago, Osborn came to Fisk and asked him to build a lab, but to keep it hidden from regulators.
Secret lab? For Devil's Breath? Are you crazy?
Why? Why the fuck does Fisk need to know about this? How did Osborn not realize how easy it is for Fisk to blackmail him at any moment? Osborn has plenty of money and resources. Just make your own lab without ties to other people, especially Wilson fucking Fisk. I can't get behind how fucking stupid Osborn in this game is.
Ah, yes, because Osborn is going to someone who can clearly keep illegal things secretive and under wraps, as he did for 8+ years, and can easily get a discreet lab with no government trace due to his connection to corruption. Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense as to why Norman would want to go to Wilson Fisk to build an illegal secret lab that goes against every state and federal regulation, in a city that Fisk basically ran for the past 8 years. Yeah, that makes no sense at all. That, like, literally no sense. Jesus.
One of the Sable agents suggests a lockdown, but another says no because Norman is in an important call.
Exterior sweep negative. Should we go on lockdown? Not yet. Mr. Osborn is in the middle of an important call.
What the hell? You should have locked down the building once you knew an intruder was hacking the place. Who fucking cares if Osborn is having a phone call? He's inside the building. He'll be fine. Especially if an intruder isn't just let into the building for whatever reason. It's not like there's a terrorist organization out there trying to kill Norman Osborn.
First of all, the Sable Militia didn't even know that there was an intruder in the first place. And also, for this terrorist organization that's out there trying to kill Norman Osborn, they literally have like 2 helicopters, drones, and snipers aimed at the fucking building. How on God's earth would they just expect someone to be able to break into that bitch? Especially considering that Sable is a very egotistical organization.
Be careful. In the wrong hands, this could...
Don't worry, we're the best in the world.
Oh, would you look at that? Spider-Man gains access to super secret files on Osborn's computer that hasn't been password protected to any capacity.
Bro, he's inside a fucking secured building that's being guarded by a fucking army right now. And also, do I need to give the Andor parallel once again? Norman is also someone with an ego. This is not only a parallel to Star Wars in the Empire, but it's also a parallel / comparison to fucking real life. And having an ego is something that breeds ignorance and arrogance. And I'll let Mr. Martin Luther King Jr. take this one away. Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscious stupidity. So Norman being arrogant and ignorant, same with Wilson Fisk, and same with the Sable Militia, and same with any egotistical person in the world, or just in stories in general, like the Empire. That's not bad writing, that is just a character flaw of a character. And many people in real life are arrogant, many people in real life are ignorant, and many people in real life have an ego. The only problem that egos and arrogance and ignorance arises in writing is when you have a main character and that character is supposed to be likable, and if that character never develops past being egotistical. But even still, if you have a character that has earned the right to be arrogant and is actually a charismatic character and is also likable, and they also face consequences sometimes for being arrogant, such as Tony Stark, then that's how you write an arrogant and likable character. But that is completely different from a Norman Osborn, a Wilson Fisk, or the Sable Militia.
So instead, I'll focus on how fucking stupid it is that these tiny devices causing noise somehow gets these guards to not notice her. They're gonna fucking check the device and conclude that the device is either a dangerous bomb or some type of lure.
I don't even feel I need to talk about the fact that he said that the Sable, like, militia is just stupid, or like their enemy AI. I mean, like, yeah, they're fucking, it's an enemy AI for a stealth mission. If we're gonna criticize dumb enemy AI, I could probably make you a list of at least 100 games right now, but instead I'll just give you 4 games. I don't really think stupid enemy AI should be looked at, like, through a narrative criticism. I personally do have a problem with how dumb they are for stealth segments, but that's mostly gameplay problems, I feel. Now, granted, the enemy AI from, like, the Arkham series or other games, depending on which game you talk about, they're not normally as dumb as the enemy AI in Spider-Man PS4, but to the point he makes where the Sable Militia should have alerted the guards because they saw the lure, I don't feel like loading up the fucking game to replay this mission, but you can feel free to fact check me if you want, because I'm 100% right on this. When she throws these lures, they turn invisible, so that's the reason why they don't, like, alert, I guess. And to the other point he makes, we're saying that that MJ should not be able to sneak through the Sable base in general. This is another thing, I mean, like, I can kind of agree on it, but I really do not, like, have a problem with it. And if you also have a problem with this, you should probably look at a lot more games, because there is plenty of games with stealth sections where you should definitely be getting caught, but you're not. It's just like a staple in stealth segments that people are just not smarter than the average bear. Like, there's legitimately so many games where, like, I'll play a stealth segment and someone will look dead at me and I'm like, bro, how the fuck does this dude not see me? But once again, I mean, like, if you want to use this as a criticism, that's fine, but I better not see you excusing any other games for it.
Well, that guy is dead. Great example you're setting, Spider-Man. Miles will be sure to take note of it. Actually, he won't, because he's actually a good character in his game.
Wow, that might have been one of the best things you said in this video. Miles Morales is a good character, but by your logic, you shouldn't be, right? Because in the beginning of the video, you remember when you were saying that you had a problem with Shocker causing destruction and maybe causing casualties, and when Spider-Man catches up to him, all he does is pin him on the ground. You said this was a bad thing for Insomniac Spider-Man to do. Is it still a good thing when Miles Morales does the exact same thing?
How about we use our words? How about you stop being so flaggy? Or she not tired yet?
Or how about, since you also like making appeals to reality, how do you feel when Miles Morales stops speeding cars in the same way that Peter does? How do you feel that Miles Morales punches his uncle so hard that it goes through not only a force field of some sort, but it also sends them flying to the other end of the room? How do we feel about the fact that Miles Morales, a person who doesn't know the full extent of his powers yet, lets off a massive electric blast in point-blank range around a bunch of humans, when humans can very well die at high volts of electricity being, like, absorbed into their body? So not only do you contradict that whole clip I just played from your video, but you also contradict every point of appeal to reality you've made against Peter in this whole video. And you would also be conceding that the points you've made against Peter are also not good points. Thank you. Thank you for that. I mean, like, you're really making my job easy here. I can only imagine why his like to dislike ratio looks like this. It's a mystery.
These morons have numerous armed trucks, yet decide to put Morgan Michaels and the Devil's Breath in this small-ass vehicle. Fucking why?
For one, the demons throughout the game have city crimes where they are attacking the Sable agents, and like the Sable APCs that he shows. For two, Sable has moved Dr. Michaels to a safe house, so to their knowledge, they have no idea that the demons know where he is. So they are doing what police do in real life, and they do a small, semi-discreet little witness transport. This also happens during the DLC in the game. This is a very common thing for police and FBI to do. If they had a bunch of Sable APCs, drones, and fucking like helicopters and shit following this transport, that wouldn't be very discreet, and that would be at a higher risk of an attack.
Then one of the demons flips over the car with Devil's Breath in it. Fucking why? You need that in order to carry out the plan. You need Dr. Michaels alive. Just grab Dr. Michaels and put him outside the car.
Bro, he barely flipped over the fucking car. What do you, like, people aren't made out of fucking glass. Do you really think that would fucking kill him? Like, bro, not only are you making another appeal to reality, but even in reality, someone is likely to probably survive something like that. It's not like this is a speeding car and he's flipping over a speeding car. This is a stationary car and he just flips it over, like...
Also, when Spider-Man arrives, why the fuck are the demons just positioned right on top of the truck? You don't have sticky feet like Spider-Man does. Of fucking course you're gonna fall off the truck. This requires you idiots to climb up to Spider-Man where he can see and prepare for you. Also, Sable, you fucking dumbass, why are you firing rockets nearby when this could get Devil's Breath released? There's a fucking bioweapon in that truck that can cause a global pandemic, and they thought it was a good place to fire missiles at? Fuck you, you brain-dead fucks. And look at that. The demons have once again decided to place themselves on the roof where they're the least safe. Here's a better idea. Fucking place all your guys with guns in the back of the truck and have them standing far from the exit area so they're at a safe distance to shoot at Spider-Man with minimal consequences.
Bro, I fucking can't. If they were at the back of the truck and Spider-Man was on top of the truck, they couldn't shoot him, bro. Oh my god. I feel like you're just intentionally being dumb, so I'll just let that one slide, because there's no way you thought that was smart to say. And there's literally no fucking problem with them getting on the fucking car to try and, like, hit Spider-Man. Yeah, it would make it easier for him to, like, shoot them off, but it doesn't fucking matter. They're just trying to get him off the car by any means possible. Like, what the fuck is this dude talking about? He does make a good point about the Sable militia shooting rockets at the car, like, with the bioweapon, and even Peter remarks at this in the game, but everything else he said was just some fucking stupid shit, which actually, come to think of it, it's not really a good point, because they probably did that intentionally if Peter is the one making a remark about it. It's probably intentional to show the type of organization that Sable is.
In fact, bring extra demons and cars alongside to account for Spider-Man trying to reach the driver.
Oh, you mean like what they're doing in the background gameplay you're showing? Not only do they have cars that come up to shoot at Spider-Man, but they also have people on the truck trying to fucking stop Spider-Man. Like, bro, the fact that there's people in the comment section of this video actually trying to defend this shit, it just proves further proves my point that I made in the beginning of the video. That people that watch these types of videos are mostly people who don't have any sense of critical thinking and are just watching these videos to hear what they want to hear without thinking critically about anything or any of the points he's making. And it definitely brings me comfort to see that his like to dislike ratio looks like this, because that means that either there was people who heard out his points and are thinking just like how I'm thinking, or there's the people that didn't even watch the video and just left the dislike. And you know, to their credit, they weren't missing anything. It's not like he actually made a good argument, so props to them for not wasting their time.
Then again, Spider-Man is so fucking stupid that for a whole 10 seconds, he sat on the truck and did nothing to try stopping the driver when this driver is constantly crashing into other vehicles or buildings.
He is coming. He is coming, and he will destroy all sinners.
Sorry! Please, hand it over!
Alright, welcome back to Clip Analysis. So, we see this cutscene where we have no idea what Spider-Man is doing at this point. The only thing we see Spider-Man is when we get to this point, so you add a timer on your little thing when we don't know what was happening before this truck was arriving. There could have been Sable agents shooting at demons, you know what I'm talking about. And when we get to this point, we see Spider-Man looking around. Why would Spider-Man be looking around right here? Maybe because there are Sable agents following him, demons that were just following him, civilians on the street that could possibly get hurt from like this car speeding. So he is just checking his surroundings real quick, and then he immediately gets on top of the fucking car, where we then immediately see Peter try to stop this car.
The Grand Central scene is a disaster. I've already talked about MJ, so I don't need to go over that again, but even besides MJ, we have catastrophic issues. When MJ searches the area, she finds a dispersal device that can release something into the atmosphere and spread like wildfire, like the Devil's Breath, and there's a voice message that details its exact capabilities. This is deeply troublesome. Firstly, why would Oscorp casually have this device out in the open where it's incredibly easy to steal? People can put anything in that device once they've stolen it, and put the entire city at risk. Not only is this poor security, but this would be poor for Oscorp's image, because people know that not only such a dangerous device like this exists in Oscorp's hands, which is very concerning in itself, but also that they didn't even secure it properly and made it easy for it to get stolen. What the fuck is wrong with them? Even when the demons are known for trying to use Devil's Breath, they still fucking kept this here? Brain dead. Absolutely brain dead.
This geometric dispersal device, whatever the fuck it's called, like not being secured and just out on the open, it was most likely an intentional plot point, and it's more of a showing that Oscorp nearly like dooms themselves thanks to their fucking hubris and ineptitude. This would be bad writing if it was out of character for Osborn to be arrogant, egotistical again. And once again, I bring up the Andor parallel in comparison. Norman in this game consistently fails to take basic common sense safety measures, you know, like putting the Devil's Breath lab dead in Manhattan, because he doesn't care about the risk of the Devil's Breath infecting the city because he's trying to save his son, and Dr. Morgan Michaels outlines that to us, but he doesn't care about this because he's too arrogant and unconcerned about other people's safety to take it to heart. This isn't bad writing, this is just a showing of Norman and Oscorp as an industry, because once again, Martin Lee was probably bringing Norman to this exact spot so that his lack of care for this city and having this dangerous device out on display would be shown to full effect by Martin making Norman use this device to release a dangerous virus, whatever, onto the city using the same device that he left out so carelessly, which would be further showing the city, which is Lee's goal, that Norman is a piece of shit. That is the point of his writing in this game. It is consistent with his character. I don't know what you don't understand about this. He also makes it out to seem like this device is just so easy to steal. You can't just casually walk out of the station with this. For one, it's obviously heavy because the demon is carrying it with two hands, and you can also hear it grinding on the like platform that it's on when he pulls it off. And also, there's probably security checks before you walk out, and also it's not gonna be like someone would see you taking this big-ass object. Like, where are you gonna put this thing, in your pants? I mean, I guess you could make the excuse that you were born with a giant fucking rectangle for a penis. Maybe then they'll just let you walk out with it in your pants. But this isn't just a fucking bag of Skittles you can just fucking walk out of the corner store with. It's not gonna be very easy for someone to take this device when there's security in the station, probably security checks, and people around the station that would probably call you out for this.
Lee's plan is to get Norman to release the Devil's Breath himself when forced at gunpoint to do so. Lee, How the fuck do you expect to make Norman look bad by doing this?
I've already just explained why it would make Norman look bad, and not only to show that Osborn doesn't care about the city having this dangerous device out on display, but also further contributing to the Devil's Breath narrative and the fact that he just wants to make Norman look like he can't protect this city and also expose him for the bad person that he is. Once again, this is you not understanding the writing of the game.
Spider-Man distracts the demons with his web after one of them leaves their drone tablet unattended. What the fuck? You heard a noise that made you believe someone is here to stop them. Why leave the tablet unattended?
Because the drones are automated and work by themselves. Like, bro.
Why leave the tablet unattended like that? And how convenient is it that right when MJ is going for the tablet, this dumbass tries to single-handedly take down a bunch of guys with guns thinking he could stand a chance here? I can accept someone like this may exist, but holy fuck how convenient that timing is.
And this is a bad thing. Why?
I have a direct line to Mayor Osborn. I can help make sure he arrives on time.
But Martin Lee calls Norman twice in this game. He also has a direct line to Mayor Osborn, so what MJ says shouldn't even matter.
I don't know if you're blatantly neglecting context, but the reason it matters is because that the demon tells Martin Lee that MJ knows how to find Norman Osborn. That is completely different from calling him. And the demons are also foreign, so they may have misinterpreted her English. And they also might have thought that MJ was just someone who knows the mayor or is close with him or something like that.
But these aren't even the worst parts about this scene. The worst part is how they've assassinated Spider-Man. And I'm gonna be honest, this one's the biggest hit.
Ooh, this one should be good. This is the biggest one, you guys. This is it.
Let's establish some context. Spider-Man webbed a guy against the wall without even covering his mouth, which means any second the demons could walk around and see a sign that Spider-Man is here.
I think how loud Spider-Man takes this guy out is actually just gassed up. Like, yeah, sure, it sounded loud for us, but all the stealth takedowns in this game sound pretty loud. And they never really hear them in this other stealth section, so the sound effects that they're using could just be gassed up because they obviously didn't hear anything, so it was probably much more silent in the actual universe, you know what I'm saying? For reference, like in the Arkham games, Batman's grapple gun is pretty fucking loud, yet nobody ever hears it, so that's kind of just an example.
If Spider-Man or any other signs of interference are present, this puts the demons at risk of losing, which can cause them to become impatient and release the Devil's Breath.
Keep what he just said there in your heads for his later in his argument.
Spider-Man or any other signs of interference are present, this puts the demons at risk of losing, which can cause them to become impatient and release the Devil's Breath, which Peter doesn't even know is on a timer.
The Devil's Breath is not on a timer yet. It doesn't go on a timer until later in the mission.
If they see MJ has randomly escaped, they may decide to go kill the guy they initially took hostage.
And why exactly would they just kill this guy if MJ escaped? If MJ escaped, why would they just go back and shoot this random guy and shoot him? Like, for what? They already let him go.
But even with all of this context, Spider-Man refuses to go stop the Devil's Breath immediately.
Even with all this context, what fucking context? We see the context that you perceive, not the actual context being laid out. That, like I said in the beginning of the video, you're just creating problems that aren't actually there. MJ literally told Peter that Lee would not release the Devil's Breath until Norman got there. The context that you provided or perceived and made up to try and construct your narrative, you said the Devil's Breath is on a timer. No, it's not. Not yet, as I explained earlier.
If Spider-Man or any other signs of interference are present, this puts the demons at risk of losing, which can cause them to become impatient and release the Devil's Breath.
You say this, but if Peter was to go get the Devil's Breath immediately, if Spider-Man is not careful about this, not only would it risk him being spotted, it would also risk innocent civilians getting caught in the crossfire of a fight, and it would also put him at risk of them releasing the Devil's Breath immediately. And Peter doesn't know that the Devil's Breath has to run on a timer before it releases. For all he knows, they can release this shit immediately, and he doesn't want to risk that by possibly getting spotted by going after the Devil's Breath immediately, because there is drones around and there is also armed guards patrolling.
He wastes time talking with MJ, and he basically outlines that he was going to waste time taking MJ outside the building, when the time he spends doing that is an opportunity for the demons to release Devil's Breath.
I'm gonna go over this point further, but I'll let him talk for a second, but I have to say something real quick. Once again, with the context that Peter has, that MJ told him that they would not release the Devil's Breath until Norman got there.
Either Spider-Man brings her out through any of the doorways, which reveals his location, or Spider-Man takes her through the vents, which would take a while to transport MJ through, or Spider-Man kicks open a window to bring her outside, which would draw attention and definitely reveal his location.
Once again, he's creating problems in his head and just assuming that Spider-Man has only these ways to get MJ out of here. We don't know how long it would have taken Peter to get MJ through the vents. We don't know if there's any other way that Peter could have got her out of that situation. There's no actual problem here. You're just creating them. And also, by Peter stating that he wants to get MJ out here, it also seems that he is confident in his ability to get her out of there quickly.
Whichever way he decides to bring out MJ would give an easy opportunity for them to release Devil's Breath. This is a worldwide threat that Spider-Man was just going to ignore, so he can save MJ, who would die from the outbreak anyway, as would Aunt May, Otto, Miles, Harry, and anyone else that Peter cares for. This is catastrophic to Peter's character.
And now let me pick this whole entire argument apart. I've already discussed the fact that Peter knows that they won't release the Devil's Breath until Norman gets there. And I've also described the fact that Peter is confident in his ability to get MJ out of danger quickly and also deal with the Devil's Breath. He also acts as though Spider-Man doesn't fucking save these people. Like, he literally saves them and stops Lee and helps MJ disarm the bomb and helps the people get out of the station. And he acts as though Spider-Man literally just lets the Devil's Breath get out. He's literally mad that Spider-Man even had the thought of saving MJ when I've already outlined once again that he is confident in his ability to get her out of there quickly while also deal with the Devil's Breath, but doing that while MJ is not in harm's way. And also, anyone that knows Spider-Man, you know when his loved ones are at risk, he focuses all his attention towards getting them safe, and at times even acts out of character or neglects responsibility to keep his loved ones safe. This has happened numerous times throughout the books, but I'll show you a couple examples. Remember in Ultimate Spider-Man when Peter wouldn't fight Green Goblin, who was causing destruction by chasing him until he got Aunt May and Gwen to safety? And in the same book, Green Goblin threatens to kill everyone he loves, and Peter kills Green Goblin. Remember when Morlun broke MJ's arm while Peter was on his deathbed, and Peter senses this and uses his last bit of strength he had in his body to get up and kill Morlun? Remember in Spider-Man Life Story when he watches Harry Osborn blow up 3 clones, and instead of saving them, he makes sure Gwen is okay, and this mistake ends up being the reason why Peter's real Gwen died in Life Story? What I just showed you are multiple examples of Peter acting out of character, aka when he kills Green Goblin or kills Morlun, and another example of Peter neglecting his responsibility and not saving the clones, which leads to Gwen's death. So it is not out of character for Spider-Man to act differently when his loved ones are at risk. And Peter's moral standards is with great power comes great responsibility, but Peter is not always responsible. He consistently, throughout 90% of his stories and runs, is constantly making mistakes and constantly suffering for those mistakes. So your argument that Peter in this situation is
catastrophic to Peter's character.
To his character or comic accuracy, you're not making a very good argument at all. And for another thing, like, let's look at the end of the game. Are you mad that Peter had the thought of saving Aunt May instead of the entire city? The whole reason Peter even questions or even remotely not saving the city is because of Aunt May, someone who he loves. These are literally like the exact same two situations. And in both instances, Peter winds up doing the responsible thing. Like, oh my. And I'd also like to play a clip now from a channel that is called Story Street. This channel made a really good video about the great writing of Spider-Man PS4, and he outlined some of the things that make Peter's writing in this game so great, and y'all should actually really go watch this video because it is a great video. I will leave it below in the description.
I don't need to tell you that this bit at the beginning of the game is the perfect representation of Peter Parker's character and his priorities. Anyone else who has talked about this game has probably already told you that. However, I will tell you that it also serves as a nice introduction to the internal conflict at the core of this particular version of the character. Short versus long-term consequences. Peter will often choose to accept long-term consequences over short-term ones. He'll go after Fisk in order to avoid the short-term consequence of his escape, but in doing so, he submits to the long-term consequence of getting kicked out of his apartment. And then going after Fisk is in itself another active decision to avoid short-term consequences, while accepting potential long-term ones. It's brought up multiple times throughout the opening mission that Fisk, as the resident crime boss, keeps criminals from running rampant through the streets.
I'm the one who kept order in this city! 1 month! In 1 month you wish you had me back!
But Peter forgoes those potential consequences in order to avoid the short-term consequence of letting Fisk get away. And of course, it's the absence of Fisk that ultimately allows for the demons to make their move. What's interesting here is that no matter what happens or which consequence ends up occurring, Peter will blame himself for it. If crime does start running rampant, which in a way it does, then he will blame himself. But if Fisk got away because he let him go or failed to stop him, he will blame himself for whatever wrong Fisk does next. In a situation where neither option lacks a negative consequence, Peter's mindset always sets him up to fail, because no matter what decision he makes, he will always be responsible for the outcome. It's always on him. So of course he focuses more on the short-term consequences, because at least then he can have some semblance that he did the right thing before he gets back to his apartment and realizes that all his stuff is gone, and he not only has to go all across the city searching for it, but he also has to then actually find a place to stay the night. Ultimately, the delay of long-term consequences means that his focus will always be on short-term gratification, and better he hurts than someone else in the meantime. But that doesn't mean those long-term consequences don't still gnaw at him when they come to pass. Because for someone like Peter Parker, losing his apartment or his job are pretty light consequences when compared to some of the consequences he has to deal with as Spider-Man. Consequences like the death of Miles Morales' father. Martin Lee took his opportunity after the capture of Fisk to begin his vengeance on Norman Osborn, which led to the City Hall bombing that killed Miles' dad. One way or another, as far as Peter is concerned, this happened as a result of the long-term consequences of him putting away Fisk and the short-term consequences of him failing to stop Lee in time. He can't even properly console Miles after it happens because as far as he's concerned, this is his fault.
So, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking I screwed up, and that kid lost his father.
Insomniac's Peter's fatal flaw is that he holds himself to an impossible standard. He wants to be perfect, he wants to save everybody, he's a total idealist with a strong sense of justice, and if he is unable to uphold that, he takes it as a personal failure. Because with great power comes great responsibility. And every time an innocent person dies, he fails to uphold that responsibility. When Lee tries to turn Peter in the middle of the game's second act, he does so by using that guilt against him, showing him that as much as he tries to save everyone, he's let so many die by allowing Norman Osborn not only to operate as usual, but to live at all. And as much as Peter fights against it, tries to tell him that he can't save everyone, this remains the battle that Peter fights in himself every day of his life. The conflict between what he could and couldn't do, the people he did and didn't save, the good he's done, and the good he's failed to do. Ironic, yeah, but it's true. Insomniac's Peter Parker does, in a way, reject the very concept of duality, the idea that anyone can be more than one thing. He has a very black and white perception of the world. You're either a good guy or a bad guy, an ally or a victim, a hero or a villain. And that makes enough sense when it comes to Peter's character himself. Peter might have these two identities, but really Spider-Man is just an extension of Peter's own ideals and sensibilities. He's Peter's desire to do and be good, just in different ways than Peter is able to on his own. At the end of the day, Peter might have two identities, but they're essentially the same identity in two different sets of clothes. Literally. The fact of it is that Peter is a fundamentally good person. He genuinely wants to help people and make the world a better place in whatever way he can, sometimes with an unhealthy disregard for his own well-being. There's not a single part of himself that isn't selfless, whether as Peter or Spider-Man, and with his general desire to trust others and believe in their inherent good, of course he would assume that everyone around him also has a singular identity. And it's that assumption that often endangers his relationships. Take Mary Jane, for example. When we start the game, they're not even on speaking terms, though it doesn't seem like there's a lot of animosity when they do reunite. The reason for their breakup remains unclear for a large chunk of the game until finally, Peter's singular understanding of MJ as a damsel that needs to be saved leads him to unwittingly interrupt her before she can get crucial information about their shared plight.
You know this is exactly why we broke up.
I thought we broke up so you could focus on your career.
We broke up because you wouldn't stop treating me like a baby. Don't do this, MJ. Don't do that, MJ. Oh, that's too dangerous, MJ. I may not have super spider powers, but I'm not made out of glass.
Peter couldn't think of MJ as anything more than someone that he needed to protect, and that completely invalidated the very concept that she could ever do anything for herself. Through his mindset of rejecting duality, he denied her a full identity, denied her the ability to be active and do good in her own way. So not only does he reject duality because he isn't able to see it in himself, he also does it as a sort of defense mechanism. He has to view others as singular identities so that he can better understand who is who in his world, who needs to be saved, who can help, and who is the enemy. If those identities start crossing over with one another and shifting over time, then things get complicated, people get hurt, and he will believe that it's his fault. His rejection of duality is a means of self-defense, an attempt to control reality enough to prevent those short-term consequences like MJ getting hurt, regardless of how much that long-term consequence of losing her will hurt when it comes to pass. But throughout the game, this perception is consistently challenged. While he's blaming himself for Otto's turn, he's watching Martin Lee, a man he always knew to be kind and giving, turn into the monster that is Mr. Negative, and Mr. Negative himself and his ability to bring out the negative side of people force him to question the capacity for that duality in literally everyone else. He's seeing MJ go after leads on her own, getting information they need, and generally not always being the damsel in need he always saw her as. And he sees Miles Morales, the weak, grief-stricken kid he failed to connect with, and chooses to teach him how to be strong, because he realizes that what he needs more than anything after everything he's been through is to be reminded that he can still be strong. And this all comes to a head when, after fighting off both Electro and Rhino with broken bones, he has to save Aunt May from a fire. MJ helps to get May out, and Miles saves him when he falls. It was the people he thought he needed to save that end up saving him. Through confronting that rejection of duality, Peter has to recognize the duality in himself. That while he's often strong and capable, he has limits. Spider-Man might be able to fight heavily armored giants and a flying dude with electricity coming out of his arms, but Peter Parker is still human. Just because you have great power doesn't mean that everything is your responsibility.
This is all my fault.
No, not the song again. You are not alone anymore, Pete.
You have to be willing to do what you can and recognize what you can't. Trying to do everything and save everyone, especially all on your own, is impossible. There are going to be things you just can't do. People that you just can't save.
I just wanted to play those two segments of that video in this video because it really is just a great showing of the writing in this game. Something Story Street didn't mention also, as I showed with the clip earlier with Brian Intihar, Peter is someone who thinks he has to shoulder all this responsibility on his own, and then later throughout the game he starts to rely on other people. Not only just relying on other people for help, but also relying on other people in other aspects, and also relying on other people to remind him what's important, like what MJ does in this scene. Through that rejection of duality, as Story Street mentioned, Peter is seeing someone he loves as a damsel in distress right now, and he wants to handle this situation without the risk of her being in harm's way. Not only that, but with Peter knowing that MJ wants to help him in this situation as well, that would put her at an even higher risk of possibly being killed. So it makes complete sense for Peter to be worried more about MJ in this situation. This is also very comparable to Arkham City and one of the arcs that Batman goes through in Arkham City as well. Batman in Arkham City has been pushing people away up to this point, and when he wants to go save Talia instead of stopping Hugo Strange from having this terrorist attack on Arkham City, Alfred reminds him what's really important, and he is relying on other people to remind him of this, instead of shouldering all this responsibility by themselves. This is not bad writing, these are just character flaws, and not character flaws in a critical sense, but in a writing sense. You know what I mean. And yet again, this man makes another false equivalency in this video.
An even worse moment than when Peter tries to weasel out of saving the world in Far From Home.
Yeah, you see, the difference with Insomniac Spider-Man is Insomniac Peter is not trying to weasel out of this situation. He is just trying to get MJ out of here quickly to take some stress off of himself. And he's trying to get rid of those short-term consequences of MJ getting killed in this situation. Peter is confident in his ability to get Mary Jane out of this situation and also deal with the Devil's Breath. Because as shown in Story Street's video, and as he also explained, Peter is shouldering all this responsibility and is trying to be perfect and save everyone. But he's also focusing more of his attention to MJ because this is someone he loves. Peter in Far From Home is completely just doesn't want to help at all with this situation. So these are not comparable, and you're making yet another false equivalency.
Anyway, the demons start a 2-minute timer. MJ starts to handle the timer, although this is something Spider-Man should have dealt with himself. All he has to do is web the timer up to him and do the wiring himself instead of instructing MJ to do so. He should have done that instead of prioritizing MJ over the fucking world.
If Peter would have webbed up the Devil's Breath, they probably would have seen him. So instead he starts taking out the demons so that him and MJ can get people to safety. And then when the demon's focus has left looking at the Devil's Breath, this is what allows MJ to disarm the Devil's Breath while Peter does his thing in the background. And if Peter was to web up the thing, not only would he be at risk of being seen, but if he was seen with the Devil's Breath in his hand, they would have probably started shooting at him, which would also put the Devil's Breath at risk of being shot, which would make it disperse everywhere. And not only the Devil's Breath being put at risk of being shot, but other civilians. And the reason it's not a problem that Peter is webbing up the demons is because the demons aren't being focused on by other demons, unlike the Devil's Breath is being focused on. This is another example of you overthinking something, creating problems that don't fucking exist. And you're not only doing that, but you're also trying to think logically about a situation that you yourself are not actually in. You're not under the stress that Peter is right now, which allows a person with an outside perspective to think more clearly than Peter, who is in the stressful situation right now, where he has to worry about the demons, the Devil's Breath, losing someone he loves, and innocent lives. Peter is not only putting himself under a major amount of stress, but he is under a major amount of stress. And he is still human at the end of the day. For good example of this, for anyone who watches UFC or boxing, how many times have you been watching a fight and wondered, why is he not throwing this type of punch? Or how did he not see that punch coming? Why didn't he dodge that punch? Why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? It is much easier to try and think logically of a situation that you are not in and are looking at from an outside perspective, if you can kind of pick up what I'm putting down. Actually, for a better example that everybody could relate to, imagine having a full recording of your entire life and going back and watching every situation you were ever in. This is like me going back and watching my entire life story and everything I've done and looked at every situation and said, oh, well, why didn't I do this in that situation? Why didn't I do this? Because I'm looking at it from an outside perspective, and since I'm from an outside perspective, I am not thinking the same as the person in the situation right now. Everybody in the world has looked back at their past and saying, oh, I wish I would have done that. But the reason they didn't do back then what they think they should have done now is because in the present time, they weren't thinking the same as they were in the past. Peter is not a perfect person. He is under a lot of stress, and he's not always going to be perfect. He's not always going to be thinking clearly, and he's not always going to make the best decision. Think about this from Peter's perspective. He is looking at someone he loves be within 5 to 10 feet of a person that would most likely shoot her, while also having to worry about the devil's breath and other innocent civilians. You're expecting him to be thinking clearly and acting perfect in this scenario? Like, what the fuck? Like, I know you've made it blatantly obvious that you don't know what you don't understand the concept of writing, but writers write these characters in character and like real actual people that actually have to make tough decisions. They don't write characters to be perfect in every situation. If you want to watch a story like that, go watch Captain Marvel. Go watch Rey in the Star Wars sequels. You know why these characters are so criticized? It's because they are Mary Sue's, aka a character who is perfect and has no real fatal flaws to their character, and rarely makes mistakes. And I am so fucking happy that you are not the writer for Spider-Man, because your shit would probably be worse than the bullshit they're putting out in Spider-Man's newest comics. It's fucking brain dead, and I cannot believe that you actually think these are good points. And I can guarantee you that your favorite thing, your favorite movie, game, fucking TV show, anything, I could put these types of criticisms on something that you love, and I guarantee you, you would switch your whole perspective on this.
Martin Lee and the demons being on a train would draw attention. If there's people in the same car, they're calling the cops.
There is no other people on this train car, and that was probably their plan.
If not, Lee would have had to clear the place first, which still attracts attention anyway.
And how exactly would Martin Lee clearing a train that's already in a docking station cause attention? He also probably could have predicted that the cops would have known about this. Like, yeah, he told Norman to come alone, but obviously he could have expected Norman to call the cops. Like, we also have no, full context on what their full escape plan was. So things like rail lines being shut down might have been being dealt with outside of the scenes. And instead, with this whole part of his video, he's just still creating problems that really just aren't there. And he's trying to think logical when he has literally no context on what their full escape plan was, how it was set up, or anything like that. All we know is that Martin was planning to use this train to escape. We don't know what was going on outside of the scenes, and we really do not need the full context of his escape plan, because in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter. All that matters is that he has the means to escape.
Why not stay on the hijacked train instead of transferring to one out of his control?
Because Martin Lee is in a fit of rage and he's trying to hurt Spider-Man, and he's not thinking all the way clearly, you know, like someone might be thinking from an outside perspective. The point that he just made right there further backs up what I was saying, like about when you're watching like a UFC fight and you're thinking like, oh, why is he not doing this? Why is he not doing that? Which is why you can't always try and think logically about certain situations that you are not in.
What the fuck? This train didn't even have a conductor? Fucking why?
I have a simple solution to this nitpick. Automatic trains.
Why is nobody hitting the emergency brakes once they saw Lee in the front car causing all this damage, which would cause the train to go out of control?
For one, we have no idea where the emergency brakes are placed on this train. For two, there might not even be emergency brakes on this train, since Spider-Man remarks,
"No brakes? No problem."
And if your refute to that argument is, well, trains in real life have emergency brakes, I really hope we're not doing this again.
Why isn't Spider-Man hitting the emergency brakes? What he does instead would have risked a shit ton of lives if there were people on the street above the train. Fucking hell, what a terrible hero.
What a terrible hero, man. Like, he's just, yeah. I've already discussed the brakes thing, but Spider-Man tries to do something that has worked in the past when stopping a train.
Totally worked last time.
And instead of letting the train crash into this station where people would probably get hurt, not probably, actually, they for sure would have gotten hurt, instead he opts for the option to bring the train up on the street above, which he knows might still be down due to construction on the street.
Yuri, they still doing construction on 42nd and 1st?
Street's closed for another month. Why?
Spider-Man doesn't really have a lot of options here. The train has no brakes, the train's about to crash into a station full of people, so instead he takes the safest option. I also liked how he remarks, a shit ton of people would have died by Spider-Man bringing this train up onto the street. Yeah, I'm sorry bro, this shit isn't a fucking nuclear bomb. This shit would have maybe hit 3-5 cars max. I'm gonna mention a few more points from his video because this video is already way longer than I wanted it to be, and I'm tired of editing this shit. And as I've shown, and as you can go watch his video for yourself, a lot of his points are nitpicks that don't really matter, or they're nitpicks that are just wrong. More appeals to reality, him not understanding the character writing, him not understanding the character development, and also him expecting people in stories to always be perfect. When if everybody was perfect in a story, we would never have fucking interesting stories. He makes more points like what I just mentioned, and I would just be repeating myself if I mentioned every single one. And he does raise some valid points in his video, and I use that some word very harshly because his actual good points take up like 5 to 10% of this video, and most of them are still not very important things to bring up and don't really matter that much. But I'm gonna mention a few more of his points and then end my video.
So Peter finds out what Otto did with the neural interface. He learns of the harmful side effects, including personality changes, increased chances of memory loss, and life-threatening conditions.
Yeah, I just want to point out that he just blatantly lied there because it never mentioned any life-threatening conditions. Otto was never at risk of dying from using this. The only thing it showed was...
The neural web isn't isolating your motor neurons. It could be affecting other parts of your brain, your inhibitions, your mood.
Don't you love when people just blatantly lie to make their argument sound stronger?
He ignored basic safety precautions due to his desperation to finish his work, which isn't a problem in the writing, but it is something Peter knows is true by this point. For all Peter knows, Otto is already damaged. His ability to make judgments is hindered. This is not someone you leave behind unattended, alone to run tests and fix bugs on their own judgment, especially a friend. Yes, he turned off the neural interface and said he would try to work out some bugs. But Otto's word on this can't be trusted, as the neural interface could leave a lingering effect on Otto, and he could just turn the neural interface back on at any moment, thinking he worked out all the bugs. Peter doesn't even stay with him to make sure all of these issues are worked out. He just leaves Otto to deal with it all himself, even when Otto was already shown to be neglectful of the harmful side effects, and very adamant on how little it matters to him. If Otto ever reaches this level of recklessness and lack of self-care, Peter can't reliably leave him alone to handle this himself. He needs to be there to make sure he doesn't do anything to harm himself, especially since he doesn't even know how long Otto has turned it on for, and didn't even bother asking to figure it out. There could already be significant damage done, but nope, he just fucking leaves him there to potentially screw things up worse than he already has.
And yet again, he just blatantly proves he did not understand the writing of this game. Like, it's laughable at this point. And again, I really want to give a shout out to Story Street on this one. I actually reached out to him and I asked if I could use a portion of his video in my video, because he just explains the writing in this game so well, and he just breaks it down in so much fucking detail in his video, and it is genuinely a great video, and he has a great channel, and he does it a lot for other projects. But yeah, I'm gonna let Story Street take this one away again, and I will build off it after the clip is done playing.
Otto Octavius is a picture of optimism and perseverance. He gets knocked down at every turn as he tries desperately to do the right thing rather than take a bigger paycheck from Oscorp. He wants to make a real difference in the world, do something that's actually good, because doing good is its own reward. But then Otto starts to become obsessed with not just giving people back their missing limbs, but making them better in the process. And that leads him to create the arms that will make him Dr. Octopus, and with Peter's help, the neural interface to control them. The neural interface that takes the kind Optimus and turns him into a bitter monster of Peter's own design. Or at least, that's how Peter sees it. The thing you've probably heard already is that to counteract the predictability of Otto becoming a villain, they made Otto into a character you didn't want to see become that villain. And that's true, but to me, the more impressive aspect of the character is that he manages to fool you into believing that there was ever a point where he wasn't the villain. I don't think it's any accident that Otto's origin here is exceedingly similar to his origin from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, arguably the most popular form of the character outside the comics. He was a fundamentally good man who wanted to make a legitimate difference but allowed hubris and pride to get in the way, his own invention making him into something he wasn't. We want to believe that this Otto is the same way, even more so because everything and everyone seems to be against him except for Peter. We want to believe that this good man only became what he did because of things that were outside his control. But that's simply not the case. As the game goes on, it becomes more and more apparent that he was planning this from the start. And his talent for manipulation is on full display when you're walking through his secret lair and learning about how he roped all of the supervillains into his plans, the way he not only utilizes what they desire or need, but also plays to their egos, flatters them, makes it almost seem like his goal is to help them even when it's obvious that they're just a means to an end. Otto Octavius is an arrogant genius trying to prove to the world that he matters after a lifetime of being punished and viewed as a failure, a lifetime of watching bad people like Norman Osborn succeed while he was punished for trying to do something positive in the world. And as time goes on, he becomes more and more desperate to achieve his goal because he's running out of time. Physically, he's falling apart, even if his mind has never been sharper. While Norman gets richer and more successful, he's losing everything. The arms are not only his way of getting revenge on Norman, they're his way of helping his body to keep up with his mind.
For the first time in my life, I don't feel like a failure. I feel like me.
Otto Octavius is terrified of dying a failure, dying unremembered, dying weak and helpless, while the man he thinks never deserved it only gets more and more of the recognition Otto's only dreamed of. But Peter sees none of this. When all the supervillains escape the raft and he's been nearly killed, when Otto shows up and reveals himself as the mastermind of it all, the very next thing we hear him say is,
Dr. Octavius, why? How did I let this happen?
How could he let this happen? How could he let Otto become this? Almost instinctively, he puts all the blame on himself. From the beginning, Otto was a mentor and a friend, perhaps even that often elusive thing for Peter Parker, a father. Otto was everything Peter wants to believe that people are. Inherently kind, giving, and selfless, Peter wants to believe in people, he wants to trust them, and Otto knows that. So he gave Peter the side of himself that wasn't angry and resentful. He gave him the side of himself that wanted to change the world, not the side that just wanted to matter. Because he knew that if he gave Peter one side of himself, he'd never be willing to believe there was another. Because there's one thing that Peter never believed in.
I've already went over the rejecting duality part of his video, but the part that I just showed was what segued into the rejecting duality part of his video. Peter in this game is someone who rejects that duality. He wants to see the good in people. Even when Martin has done all this bad shit as Mr. Negative, he still tries to reach that good person he believes is there.
Why do you insist on trying to save this piece of scum?
I'm trying to save you, Martin. Don't let revenge win. Fight it!
Osborn needs to pay.
I know. But this is the wrong way, Martin.
Even when Otto's done all this stuff to the city, even when Otto is the reason Aunt May is sick, even when Otto reveals that he's done all this stuff to Spider-Man despite knowing it was Peter this whole time, Peter still for a moment sees that good person he thought he knew.
That wasn't me. You said you'd never abandon me. You promised. Remember?
So when Otto says this to Peter,
for the first time in my life, I don't feel like a failure. I feel like me.
Otto, you're not a failure. But this could permanently damage your mind. Please.
Right. Right.
Don't worry. We're close.
I'll keep at it. I'll work out some bugs. Go. Go.
You sure you're okay?
Yes. Thank you, Peter. For everything.
Peter is not thinking how you or me is thinking in this situation. Peter is still seeing the good man. The man that he thought he can trust to do the right thing. Because to this point, that's the man that Otto showed himself to be. And this is what about the writing you did not understand. And which is also why, once again, you can't put yourself in Peter's position and think, oh, well, this is what I would do, because you are not Peter. It's the same reason you can't think of Batman's situation and think, oh, well, what if he just killed these villains? Wouldn't it just stop a lot of death from happening in Gotham? Sure, but that's not the type of person that Batman is. Or if you look at Nathan Drake in Uncharted 2 when he was saving that reporter guy, wouldn't it be better to just leave this guy so you don't risk the chance of dying? But that's not the type of person that Nathan Drake is. Which is why you can't put yourself in someone else's shoes, a character in a story, and think, oh, well, this is what I would do, and try to use it as a criticism, because you're not this character.
What the hell? Otto didn't want Peter dead, yet he threw him into the water while in a very weak state and he could barely get up. Not only is Peter falling at a high enough height for falling on water to be like falling on concrete, but due to Peter's weakened state, he may not even be able to swim back up and could end up drowning as a result.
I mean, shit, Otto clearly knows more about Spider-Man than you do, since he clearly expected Peter to fucking survive this.
First and final warning. Stay out of our way.
Osborn decided to blame Spider-Man for the prison breakout and the disease. I don't think it's wise to make Spider-Man your enemy during this time, especially when you have Lee teamed up with a group of supervillains who have joined forces with the demons. Norman should be very worried, and even if he doesn't like Spider-Man, he would want Spider-Man on his side for the time being.
And many believe the mayor is just deflecting blame, since an exclusive report by the Bugle revealed that this disease originated in a secret, unregulated Oscorp laboratory here in Manhattan.
If Norman wanted to deflect blame, he should have blamed it on the criminals behind the breakout, including Doc Ock, who would have orchestrated it.
Oh my fucking god. I feel like I'm insulting, like, the viewer of this video's intelligence by explaining how simple this is. But for those of you who think he's making a good point here, Norman Osborn is not only trying to make it out to seem like he had the city safe and was a capable mayor and got the city under control.
The people of New York will soon make a decision that could change the course of this city forever. So when you're casting your vote, remember what I've done. We're all safer now than we have ever been.
So if he was to blame the supervillains, that would make it out to seem like he was just lying to the city. So what does he do? He blames Spider-Man and makes Sable go after him to make it out to seem like Spider-Man was a new threat. And mind you, he knows some people in the city would probably believe that because a lot of people in the city hate Spider-Man. And Norman is desperate at this point. Like, it's literally so fucking simple to understand. Like by overthinking bullshit like this, you literally miss the answer that is right fucking in front of you.
Spider-Man enters Doc Ock's space after tracking it down with Devil's Breath residue. Well then, let's talk about some of the implications of the information we receive. The first one being Doc Ock creating a corrosive to free Rhino from his suit. Wait, if Otto was working to help the Raft and had this capability, why didn't he create it and provide this to the Raft?
Damn, that's actually a really good question. Why would Doc Ock not give the prison that he's trying to break Rhino out of a weakness to make Rhino weaker? Wow. I mean, like, it's a solid question, you know?
Otto offers to clear Scorpion's record if he helps him out.
I'd just like to point out the fact that Otto also says to Scorpion that he will clear his debt.
What the fuck? How is that even possible?
A clean slate?
Did they just pull a Dark Knight Rises on us?
Where you type in someone's name, date of birth, in a few minutes they're gone from every database on Earth.
You can't just wipe away every record out there, every newspaper, photo, the fucking internet, or people's fucking memories can't just be wiped away like that. What the fuck is this deal, and why did Scorpion agree to this if it doesn't even gain him anything anyway?
So now we see why he didn't mention the fact that Otto also said he would clear his gambling debt. It's to make his argument sound stronger. Don't you love when people do that? Also, I'd just like to add in the fucking fact that when has Scorpion ever been the brightest crown in the box? Like, is this isn't a problem. Even if the clean slate doesn't matter, he still has the gambling debts.
Also, Otto has created an experimental treatment to save Vulture from his spinal cancer. Wow, just like that, Otto already has a treatment ready? Otto is 63 years old right now, so I can only imagine how long his career as a scientist has lasted, and we know he has always spoken of trying to change the world. Otto can just casually create a treatment for spinal cancer that he believes would work, but didn't even try investing in it at any point in his career? This is something people have been trying to figure out for years, and Otto can just poof out a treatment in a few days. Isn't that incredible? Now, the counter somebody may bring up is that, well, Otto is giving them empty promises.
I like how he just completely answered his own question. But once again, another example, due to overthinking, he just completely creates new problems that just aren't even fucking there.
He's not actually going to give them what they want. Well, doesn't that sound like a certain someone that Lee and Otto both hate?
I'm not sure why he mentioned the fact that Otto's being hypocritical towards just Vulture, and I'll go over this more in a second, but like, what was the point of saying that? I'm so confused. Like, his goal of this video is to criticize the story, yet he just gives a good showing of a good writing aspect. Otto and Martin Lee are so far into villainy that they have become the thing that they hate so much. That is a good writing trait. Like, what the fuck are you saying?
If the villains carry out the mission and demand Otto gives them what they want, and Otto has nothing to show for, this risks the villains and the demons completely turning on Otto, on top of the fact Otto is being hunted by Spider-Man, the police, and Sable agents.
Okay, so he's just fucking blatantly being disingenuous here. Yeah, Otto could be making false promises to certain individuals, but you probably knew that already. Let's think about the characters that actually would pose a threat to Otto, and don't tell me Otto is weak, because that's just based off another appeal to reality. This is the same person that just beat the absolute dog shit out of Spider-Man, who just beat the absolute shit out of Martin Lee. So Otto is not a weak character, so let's just throw that out the window. And his arms also have superhuman enhancements. Anyways, the only villains that would actually pose a threat to Otto is Electro, Rhino, and Mr. Negative. I'd also like to add in the fact that Otto is just someone with that hubris. We see that in full effect at the end battle with Spider-Man when he just starts toying with him.
I know your weaknesses! I have no weakness!
And you can also hear it throughout the lab recordings that if you go to Otto's lab and listen to all the lab recordings after Otto turns into a villain, you will hear it all throughout the lab recordings throughout that shit. If you want to go see it, just go look up the lab recordings for yourself. And the arms would just be amplifying his hubris and ego. So he probably doesn't even think any of these villains even pose a threat at all. But either way, his plan for Electro doesn't seem that far out of left field. Making Electro pure energy, I don't see why Otto couldn't be able to do that. Taking Rhino's armor off, don't see why Otto couldn't do that. And him and Martin Lee have the same goal of getting revenge on Norman and then killing him. That is a shared goal combined with the fact that Otto just broke him out of prison. So he's already got Martin Lee covered. Like, there's nothing that Martin Lee has to, or any reasoning that he would have to go after Otto. Otto probably didn't even need to do much convincing to actually get fucking Martin Lee to be a part of this team, since Martin would just be getting help with the goal that he was already set out to do. And once again, even if Martin Lee was to go after Otto, as I've outlined, Otto probably still thinks he can fucking beat him. He doesn't even seem to think that Spider-Man is a real threat to him. And he knows that Spider-Man has the capabilities to beat literally everybody in the Sinister Six except for himself. And as far as being able to live a normal life and not be running from the cops and shit his whole life, yeah, I don't think Otto really gives a fuck about that. Because if you go back and watch Story Street's section of like explaining his writing, Otto's already got his goal in life. He literally says, for the first time in my life, I don't feel like a failure. Otto's already gotten that thing that he wants in life. He may have wanted to help people at a certain point in his life, but through the road of this game, that man was lost. He doesn't care to be that person anymore. He's just set on his goal of getting revenge on Norman, and then he's fine. So I don't really think he cares about living a normal life. Like, living a life on the run from the cops is not an ideal life, but Otto does not care because he is so set on this mission for revenge, and the neural interface is still affecting his mind. He doesn't want to be locked up, but he probably thinks he won't ever be locked up. Like, he thinks he can evade the cops forever because of his ego, and his ego is being amplified by the neural interface, which is why we see at the end of the game he starts begging Peter to not let them lock him up.
Otto can't continue a normal life and he'll just be cooked by everyone, which makes me question why Otto didn't even wear a mask or anything to avoid being exposed as Doc Ock.
You stole my company, my ideas! Now, the truth.
For anybody that didn't understand that line of dialogue, that part was obviously conveying to us that Otto wants recognition for what Norman did to him. So obviously he wouldn't wear a mask, you fucking idiot.
This Otto makes even less sense than the Otto in Spider-Man 2 and No Way Home, who I can honestly say has at least some semblance of good characterization in those two movies. This Otto just flat out sucks. What the fuck? Okay, hold up. Not only did Doc Ock warn Peter this was a trap, not only did the container of the bombs just open on its own for Peter to see, not only did Doc Ock not think to have the bombs go off when Peter is inside inspecting the plans, but he also decided to have them go off at a location where the trap door is right above Spider-Man so he can just jump out and save himself. What the fuck kind of plan is this?
Fucking God. An intentional one, you fucking idiot. It was an intentional plan. Otto was trying to get Peter into position for Vulture and Electro. He doesn't want Peter to die to someone else. He wants to torture him, which Scorpion tells us literally in the game.
Me, I'd end it now. But Octavius is paying, and he wants to torture you, which I respect.
And now, why would Otto want to torture Peter? Let's look at this audio log from the lab after Otto turns into Doc Ock.
Parker says the interface is dangerous, but the boy's a neophyte. Never truly created anything. Parker. Always listening, aren't you? Always observing, memorizing, stealing. Who have you told about the neural interface, About my work? Well, it stops here, Parker. I trusted you.
Huh, now who's someone that Otto sees in the same way?
You stole my company, my ideas. Now, the truth.
Actual brain-dead moron. In fact, for the most efficient and foolproof way of killing Peter, why not have the entire Sinister Six there if the raft showed us that it's impossible for Peter to beat them all on his own? Killing Spider-Man should be the easiest task for them, yet they fucking fumble it so badly.
Again, Otto does not want to kill Peter at this point, so he manipulates Electro and Vulture into thinking that that bomb was Plan A, when in fact Otto knew that that trap was not going to kill Peter or had the intention to kill Peter.
Vulture drops off Spider-Man to Electro, but leaves him unattended to have a conversation with Electro instead of either Vulture stabbing Spider-Man with his wing blades or Electro shooting Spider-Man.
Sure, they could do that, but they're just communicating to each other. And again, they also don't think Spider-Man's going to beat them, which I guess you just keep forgetting.
Oh, and don't tell me that Doc Ock doesn't want Spider-Man dead. He just tried to blow him up, and Electro himself states that they're going to kill Spider-Man.
Teamwork's beautiful, ain't it? Helping you reach those unattainable goals. Like killing Spider-Man.
I'm sorry, did he think that proved his point or something? You realize that one, Electro could just be trying to kill Spider-Man because he just doesn't care, he just wants Spider-Man dead. And two, even if Doc Ock manipulated them into saying, oh, kill Spider-Man, you know that Doc Ock is aware that he has faced these villains before in the past multiple times, right? And beaten them.
How many times have we done this dance, Adrian? A dozen? 2 dozen?
He doesn't even act surprised when Peter picks up Electro's, comlink.
Electro's been grounded.
Spider-Man, I presume.
And you do realize that them trying to kill Spider-Man is another thing that impacts Otto's torture that he wants for Spider-Man, right? This dude literally has zero fucking media literacy. If Otto really wanted Peter dead, then he would have had him dead at the fucking raft breakout. But he doesn't think that Peter's going to die fighting 2 of them at the same time. 5 of them at the same time is a different story. And he also could have killed Peter later in the game, but he doesn't, because he doesn't want Peter dead. He wants to fucking torture him. Even at the end of the game, when Otto would be seemingly fed up with Spider-Man at this point, he's still torturing him and fucking with him. You are so fucking dumb. It is, oh my god.
Also, every time Vulture faces Spider-Man, or Spider-Man comes into contact with him, without using the taser webs, there's no reason for him not to do it, and no reason this wouldn't make it easier to stop the Vulture.
I fucking can't, bro. You know it's a fucking boss fight, right? You can do that if, you know this is still a video game. You could shoot him with the electric web if you want. And the electric web also doesn't take them out in one shot. Oh my god, bro.
When Electro gets taken down, only one of his hands are webbed. Web both of them, you moron, and not just his hands too, his entire body. Make sure he can't escape.
My man, 1, he does web up his body. 2, Electro has been depowered and he's clearly down for the count right now. And the cops are literally right there about to arrest them. Yeah, I'm done. There's about 30 minutes left in this video. I have no joke had this video sitting in my editing software for 4 months. I got to around the hour and 50 minute mark of this fucking video and I would just stopped and I literally didn't come back to it for months. Because every time I would come back to it, I would just remember the points he made and you can hear my voice start to just get mad at him or I just feel not doing this anymore towards the end of this video. These points are so fucking stupid. I don't even want to waste waste my time anymore with this video. Like I said, he makes a few good points throughout this video, but he makes not a single point that is actually a major criticism, or at least one that I can't just make him look stupid for saying for the rest of this fucking video. If you guys want like a part 2 to this, I will, but like for right now, I do not feel like finishing this video. But if you guys want a part 2, I will finish it. So again, comment if you do want part 2, because if I get enough comments, I will make a part 2 to the video. I would also really appreciate it if y'all would help me out on Patreon. You know, this video did take me forever to make, so I'd really appreciate it if you guys would, you know, support me on Patreon. You get early access to all my videos, and I will shout you out in my videos. For my Patreons that do support me right now, I thank you guys a lot. But yeah, again, this video is just stupid. I don't really feel like finishing it, and yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Again, thank you all for watching, and bye.